Will, I believe that we are live. I'm going to give it a few seconds just to double check that everything's gone according to plan. Let a few people join if they're that way inclined. And then we will crack on with yet another Cheltenham Festival preview, Will. All 4 days we'll go through. We'll run through every single race. We're not going to spend too much time on this. We've put an absolute maximum time limit on this as 2 hours. I'm sure with me being on it, we'll use all of that. But we'll sort of summarise the selections that we've got. There's lots of your content already up on the WhichBookie website where people can see selections for some of the races. Most of my stuff will go up on the day of the races, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. About 8 o'clock, I'll get those uploaded, so there's BOG available for those ones. But yeah, for the time being, I'll just make sure we're definitely going, and then we'll run through them. But how are you feeling, Will? Now we've got some... we've got full declarations for the Tuesday. We've got lots of jockey bookings, a few early market moves. How are you feeling about the festival? Is it time to just sit and wait till Tuesday, or more work on the agenda for you now?
More work. Yeah, the work never stops. Obviously now all those Tuesday horses that have declared, we know they're not going to be running Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So you can sift through a few of the races later on in the week as well, with fields whittled down slightly. But yeah, plenty of work to be done. But I think in terms of day one stuff, we were saying just off air there that the weather's pretty much set fair. They're describing the ground as good to soft. I think we know what we're going to get day one, really. So in terms of finalising selections, there's not much to happen between now and then, trainer form, etc., etc. It's not like somebody is going to suddenly burst into form or burst out of form.
Well, that's it. So we're in the best possible position to do this. I know we've got our other one out. I don't want to say early. I think we got it out just about the right time, but we've obviously done one of these before. Things have changed since then. Some horses have not made it to Cheltenham. Like I said, we've had the declarations come through. So we've left it for a long enough time now. People can catch up if they need to after, but we'll crack on. We'll do it the typical order of everything that is Cheltenham. That starts off with a Supreme Novices hurdle. I guess the two biggest pieces of news, I'd say, Kopek de Boord's wearing a hood for the first time in this race, and Patrick Mullins is riding Salvatore Monday, which to me would be an indication that, like Danny Mullins would be the type of jockey I'd imagine if you've got a horse that maybe doesn't settle that you'd let him go on with, whereas Patrick might be your ride him out the back type horse. So I think tactically that's suggesting to me that they're not going to be making use of Salvatore Monday. He's going to be out the back. William Money's got a first-time hood on as well. So, obviously, we say what the fancy is in this one. So, again, I don't want to waffle too much. But on the hood angle, Will, does it put you off when there's a horse in a first-time hood going in a Supreme, just because statistically people might be able to fish out some 50-1 horses that wore a hood and didn't win?
Yeah, well, statistically, exactly. There you go. Statistics are there to, what's the saying? There's lies, damn lies, and statistics, aren't there? You can always find something to back up what you want to prove, and equally you can find something to go against it, really. So I think in terms of first time hooded horses at the Cheltenham Festival, and particularly for Willie Mullins, I think he might have only had one winner, I think, in a number of selections, but that doesn't vouch for how many have actually run well above form in a hood for the first time. There's been plenty that have run well at bigger prices, so it wouldn't put me off, really. It's very similar angle to having earplugs in for the first time, which happens left, right, and centre, and we obviously don't know about because it's not declared. I don't see any particular negative. I think it's just going to hopefully help keep those horses, the likes of Kopek de Boord, Carbo, and William Money, just keep them a little bit calmer in the preliminaries.
Yeah, and I think it's good as well because you do have a 157 rated horse. There's not been many horses that have been his sort of figures to do this. For Willie Mullins to then say, well, actually, putting the hood on him might even bring out more improvement about the horse. He's not going to do something that's going to make him run worse. And I think as well, just so anyone can peel these ones out when people are having their stat battles out there, Paul Townend riding a horse that won last time out for Willie Mullins in open company, wearing a first-time hood, is 2 from 3. The other one traded 1.3 in running. So again, you can prove anything with facts. I trust that Willie Mullins as a trainer knows what he's doing more than I do. But when there was photos of him on the gallops this morning, Salvatore Monday was still wearing his hood on the gallops. Kopek de Boord wasn't wearing one. So again, I'd say it's all a positive. Anyway, definitely spent too much time talking about his hood angle in there, but it's an exciting thing to bring up. Will, your stance on this race from a betting perspective, because I can keep mine short and sweet.
Yeah.
The bookies are only offering 3 places I can see at the minute. There might be some extra concessions that go out there, but I don't see any reason to oppose Kopek de Board. I know the hood bit might put a few people off. Doesn't put me off. He's about even money now. Who knows what sort of price he might go off at? But for me, the bigger the price, not necessarily the bigger the bet I'll have on Kopek de Board, but the bigger the price about him, obviously the bigger returns I'll get for the same sort of outlay that I'm putting on. Because I've made my mind up. I'm definitely backing Kopek de Board in the Supreme. They're all running for places in behind, I think. Do you agree, or do you think there's some value somewhere else?
I largely agree, definitely. Kopek de Board is the best horse in the field, and he's got scope to potentially improve. I have had and have recommended a small each-way bet on William Money. At the minute, there's only one firm that are offering 4 places, and the rest are 3. As you say, in the coming days, there might be a few that offer a bit more, which will hopefully give a bit more bang for your buck in terms of places. But William Money was so good last time at Punchestown. All through his career in bumpers and then over hurdles, he's been so keen and he hasn't jumped well. And it's just his raw ability that's carried him through. He put it all together last time out, settled and jumped immaculately. He's obviously got the first time hood on. Hopefully that's a positive. We don't know for sure, but I can't imagine Barry Connell would do it without hoping it to be a positive. And I think a big field scenario on decent-ish ground. I mean, I know it'll be watered and it'll be good to soft and it'll be safe, etc. But it's not going to be soft or heavy. I think that's perfect for him because he'll settle, he'll jump away, and I think ability-wise, he is very, very good. The main angle into the race for me, though, is in the market without Kopek de Board. I've actually backed 3 horses for that each way 3 places market. William Money, of course, is one around about the 9-2, 5-1 mark. That'll be the main bet of the race, really, because I think he's the second best horse in the field. If you look at the bumpers, he was ahead of Romeo Coolio in a bumper. I think raw ability-wise, he's a better horse than Romeo Coolio. Now he's put it all together over hurdles. He can hopefully prove that. And the other 2 at bigger prices, they're around about 14, 16 to 1 and 20s, 22s in the market with various firms. 2 Willie Mullins horses, Carbo and Carnique. Carbo, I mean, one of 3 or 4 horses in the field for Willie Mullins that are sort of once raced or twice raced and won by a street. But the numbers he put up when he won at Punchestown as well were very, very good. On a line through the Great Nudie, compares very favourably actually to William Money. I don't think he's too far off him in terms of ability level. And Carnique chased home Kopek de Board at the Dublin Racing Festival, of course, at a respectable distance. I think he was being angled towards handicaps at that stage, but he's perhaps been sort of rerouted out of that because of his rating. And Jigginstown obviously like to have a supreme runner. He's got a hood on first time, which is interesting, and Danny Mullins as well. And he might be 8 or 10 lengths off Kopek de Board, but who knows? That might well still be the second best horse in the race. So yeah, three of the main plays in the market without for me, but the main one I think is William Money.
I like it. And there are a few of the markets I haven't looked at. There'll be some more fascinating races as we come up that I think will be good for getting stuck into the without markets. Can't remember a day we've had so many, I say certainties in inverted comma, but price-wise, Supreme, Arkle. I know we've had shorter Arkle favourites, and we'll come on to that like just now. But can't remember them being so, I guess, statistically favoured of like getting so many winners off the back. They're all fairly short. So Madborough is 4-7 now. The books have come up. We've got final declarations. Lodersud, Django Bay, Only by Night comes here, despite the fact connections have said they were going to go for a mare's chase. I think this is the right race for him. I'm not sure if he really does stay the 2.5 miles. Well, not concretely enough. And this is a grade 1 as well, isn't it? It's not like she's dodged an easier race to come to a... Well, it's not like she's dodged a harder race to come to an easy one. She's coming into the right race, I think. Touch Me Nots will always be interesting for the fact that he's still run well, and he has got that form line with Lodersud at Sandham. But there's a big price discrepancy between the 2 of those. Look, This is one wheel that I've never really been able to get into because I had a little bit on Sagino early in the season. We all know how that's panned out now. And I don't feel like I've ever been able to get in later in the season at some sort of value-y type price. Because I think everything behind Madborough, I could make a conceivable case that they could all finish second to Madborough. And I do think that if Madborough just jumps rounds, he wins. But at 4-7, I think there's some other horses that are probably a bit closer to an even money type price that I'd rather get stuck into. So I still believe that Madborough will win this one. I couldn't find an alternative. But if anyone can find an alternative, Will, it's you.
Yeah, I've struggled in this race, I must admit. Yeah, it's the one race on day one that I haven't had a bet in and probably won't, actually. Because like you, when I saw the decks sort of going in, smallish field, I was thinking, well, I like Lodersud as a horse, but I think we've seen what he is over fences. He's good, but I think we've seen enough to think that we know where his level is. And I was just wondering whether there might have been a sneaky one at a slightly bigger price that might well be a player in the market without. But I think with Touch Me Not and Only by the Night, and even Django Bay to some degree, they're priced about right where they should be for me, really. I do think Loda Sud is the clear second best. I think Django Bay is probably the second best, if not potentially the best horse in the race. But I do think he's a 2.5 mile plus horse in time.
Yeah.
He'll jump and travel, and that'll get him away with it over 2 miles. Is he quick enough to beat Majborough? I'm not sure. And the other two are good, and they're fluent, solid jumpers, which will count for plenty. But are they quite at that level? I don't think they quite are, which is why they're priced up double figures and slightly bigger. So, yeah, dare I say it, I think the bookmakers have got this right at their early prices.
Yeah, definitely. And it stinks to me. I know we've got more runners in here, but like when Galopin Des Champs and Bob Ollinger were going against it, you had two sort of big outliers that weren't even in the race. They were just happy to sit at the back and pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
I think it was Bustleton, wasn't it, that came second in that Turners in the end of it. We'll talk about him when we get onto the cross country later. But not saying these horses would necessarily be ridden with that in mind. I think they've all got like a relative chance. But I can see a world where they actually think, do you know what? Let's let Loda Sud and Majborough go dance out in front, and then we'll just have our own separate race.
Well, I think Only by Night will definitely do that. Keith Donohue's very good at that, but she is a horse who doesn't do much when she hits the front, as it were, as well. So I think she'll always, or Keith Donohue will always want to have a horse in front of her for as long as he possibly can. So, with that in mind, it might be, you could see a world where Loda Sud and Django Bay try and go forward to test Majborough's jumping. And you could see a world where Touch Me Not is a quite forward-going sort as well. So, you might have sort of hit upon something there in terms of Only by Night. She might be the one to be ridden to pick up a few pieces. But sometimes when that happens in a small field around Cheltenham and you think that's going to happen, they kind of slow things up down the hill and off the bend, and you think, oh, they're closing here, and then they go off again. So, I don't know. I think the market's right.
Yeah, and that's it. And it's almost just forcing our way in. This would definitely be a leg for me, though, on the place spot. 5 runners, I'd stick them all in. Not hoping that something bad happens to Majborough, but conceivably any of them could come in. And if the result goes your way, the result goes your way, doesn't it? Right, we will move on to the Ultima Handicap Chase, Will. I think 80% of our day one preview was about this race when I couldn't stop talking about the Changing Man. Will,
are you still convinced?
Yes, but I'm having sort of heart palpitations in the fact that Katati Dori, I put him up for that Somerset National when they had a standing start. He missed the first flight as well, got beat by the John Joe O'Neill horse, can't remember the name of it, Collector's Item. And I was disappointed. Then when he ran at Kempton, I didn't put him up. I don't know why I put myself off the fact that it was Charlie Deutsch being booked was a positive, but I saw that our power was in there as well. And I don't think Charlie Deutsch had ever ridden for Sam Thomas where he'd had more than one run in the race. So I was a bit confused by it all. As much as I know he's a nice horse, didn't expect him to go up 12 pounds and manage to, not necessarily sneaking, he's got in at 18, but basically be in this race. So I'm definitely terrified of Katati Dori in this race. But I still, when I start to dig into it and start to delve with, not necessarily when horses have been trained to peak, because the Changing Man, the Tizzards haven't had this as a plan throughout the season. They've been trying to win races all throughout the term. But I do think Katati Dori 17 days ago was a target they'd gone for. It was worth a bit more money than this, I think $1,000 more. And the horses that have run in that race that have come here, I think Marlborough won it in 2000, but that was the horse that done basically what Highland did, was got spanked by a runaway winner out in front. So yeah, statistically I'm a bit against it on there, but I'm still strong on him. He's probably short enough at the front of the market. It's sort of 6 to 1, 13 to 2 now. And as I say, when I start to go down and try and make cases for others, I can make cases for plenty, but I still just look at all of them and think they've got far more questions than to answer the Changing Man. But confidence, I don't want to say it's waning, but the closer it gets to Cheltenham and the more you just think, well, he has unseated a few times. He has made mistakes at flights. If he goes out and gets a good rhythm out in front, I think he still slams them. And I'm also a little bit sad that Victorino's been declared, because I fancied him for this race last year. Heavy ground might have gone against him, but we know he's probably better right-handed. He definitely is. But the form does tie in with the Changing Man, doesn't it? And Venetia's not the type of person that would say, enter a horse in a race, it runs badly because it doesn't suit the horse, and then to try that again. So I think there's a little bit in that. But Victorino's pretty weak on the exchange. You can get 30s and 40s about there, 20 to 1 generally with the bookies. So I've thrown a few quid at Katati Dori as a saver. I'm going to throw a few quid at Victorino as well. But I'm still hoping the Changing Man wins this one. How about you? Now we've got the final field in. Do you have a straight back to to go out with one of the horses in here, or is it a couple you're going to play?
Yeah, there was none at the top of the market that excited me too much in terms of the price they're at. I mean, you can certainly see the Changing Man, Broadway Boy, Katate Dory, Krabilly, who ran a cracker in the plate last year, Whistle Stop Tour, Henry's Friend. Look, they're all, really likeable and suitable types to some degree, definitely. But I do think this is a race where essentially year in, year out, I mean, the stats gurus will tell you that the Irish horses just don't win it, do they? But they've plenty of horses that have run well and placed in it. And I think there's a couple in here, actually, that are flying a little bit under the radar. Most notably, Zanna here, for me, for Gordon Elliott, because he's run at the last 4 Cheltenham festivals in Grade 1 events, and he's not been out of the first 4 in all 4 of them. Admittedly, they're over hurdles, different type of test here, but he ran... sorry, not all over hurdles. There was one last year where he finished 4th in the Turners behind Grey Dawning and Ginny's Destiny. Now, that form has been a little bit in and out since then because Ginny's Destiny has kind of lost his way a little bit. But I maintain that was the most strongly run race at last year's festival in terms of absolute, rock solid quality. And Zanna here jumped and travelled fine at that tempo, got a little bit outpaced and then stayed on again into 4th. For all the world, to me now, he's a stayer. He proved his kind of big field ability to handle a big field when he finished 3rd in the Galway Plate. He's been crying out for a staying test. I think he ran in the was it the Kerry National?
Yep.
Yeah, and he kind of was one of those that just got lost behind Flooring Porter, who absolutely blew that race apart. But again, he didn't kind of lose any ground from his original starting position. He just kept boxing on, similar to what many others did. So, look, for me, you can get 50-1 about a horse who readily peaks at the Cheltenham Festival. He's fine over fences, touchwood. He's fine in a big field, and he's a genuine Grade 1 animal. And he's not even top weight. He's the kind of horse. I mean, he hasn't run for 4 months, so that might be a potential sticking point. But Gordon Elliott is usually so good at producing horses fresh at the Cheltenham Festival that I think 50-1 about him is just an insult in terms of price, really. And the other one's Sequestered at 16-1, 20-1, finished 2nd at the Dublin Racing Festival in the 2 mile 5 handicap chase there. He was the only horse that finished in the first 7 or 8 home that raced around the inside on that day. It was won by Gavin Cromwell's Back to Normal, who was incredibly well handicapped. The 3rd horse, Monbeg Park, has come out and won a handicap at Leopardstown. And Sequestered just kept on rolling, kept on galloping, but because he was on probably the worst of the ground, he ended up finishing 2nd. But like I said, in comparison to the other horses that raced on the same section of the track, he absolutely smashed them. So I think he's been slightly overpriced as well. And the Irish have got to win it at some stage, surely.
Well, that's it. We talked about the stats and things like that, and even for the prominence in the betting, most of the winners have been sort of top 5 of the betting. But we have had winners at 25s and 33s in recent enough years. So potentially, when you look at those stats, we could be due the sort of the fly in the ointment or the outlier to come in, couldn't we? Zanny here case is a very strong one there, to be fair. And these are the other ones where we get the extended places for the bookies. It is good, but I'll talk about the play spot a few times on here just because I bloody love it at Cheltenham. But these are the types of ones, aren't they? There'll be 4 places up for grabs. There's obviously 24 runners. If you get a race like this where you don't have, or if you had a bit of a shock, let's say all of the first 4 home were 25-1 plus. I'm not saying it'll happen, but that on a day where you've got 4 odds on favourites would actually be enough to be a place bomb, like sort of place pop buster, wouldn't it? And it'd pay a reasonable amount. So good shouts there, Will.
Yeah, well, imagine with the play spot as well. Imagine how many people are just going to stick all of those odds on favourites in as one leg in each of those legs.
Well, absolutely, and especially in this race as well, where people will want to run for some cover. Probably if you put the first 8 in the bet and they're all going to be close to being single figures, yet they're not all going to place, are they? So could be a good leg for that. Right. Speaking of place pot busters, Annie Power, Benny Deju have all tipped up at the last. However, Will, this is a pointless, not a pointless thing. I think it is worth doing. I keep taking the dog out for a walk at 4:10 because the mares both fell, jump in the shadow when it was 4:10. They brought this back to champion hurdle time. So I won't bring it up too much, but makes me worried for Constitution Hill. But Lossy Mouth now diverting here for all that people all call the owners, whatever they want to call them, for switching races. In the 2-year plan for the champion hurdle, we thought on our preview before both of them would go for that race. Could be classed as a negative because maybe they're thinking, well, maybe she hasn't come out of it so well. But at the same time, Willie Mullins is a master of sending horses to pick up prize money and pick up grade ones. I think Lossiemouth coming in here just means that there's a good chance for me to have a bet in a race like this, because she's 4-6 with the sports books, 8-11 on the exchanges. I don't know how much closer she would get to sort of an even money shot. And if we go back to the Christmas hurdle, I know it was different type of races and different horses coming into it, but she was favourite to beat Constitution Hill at one point, and now she's about the same price to beat the girls over the trip, which I think is better for her. As much as there might have been question marks about staying last year, she hacked up that hill last year. So I'm strong in the fact that now she comes in, I'm going to have a go on Lossiemouth, but obviously she's short at the front of the market. I mentioned Take No Chances in Jatara before when we did the other preview, but now with the like of her in there, they'd need her to falter to do something. So I might look at those two in the without Lossiemouth market as like another way in. But yeah, Team Lossiemouth, it's going to be a boring one for the start of this preview because I think she just wins. But are you of the same thought, Will, or would you look at it as a bit of a negative that she swerved the 2-year plan to come here?
I think I probably would, really, because I think if, like you said, it's been the 2-year plan. Obviously, Paul Tannen's got to ride, if she was in the Champion Hurdle, he's got to ride one of them, State Man or her. Had she had an uninterrupted, really smooth season, would have been a different, an interesting choice, wouldn't it? But I think, Danny Mullins would be certainly no negative if they wanted to stick to that Champion Hurdle route. But it does, Willie Mullins has obviously had previous with this. Vitor went to the Ryanair after the Gold Cup had been the long-term plan, and he went and hosed up in the Ryanair, and everyone, was saying, well, he probably should have gone in the Gold Cup. And Willie Mullins even said himself, I just wasn't, happy with his preparation. So in my mind, I'm thinking back to that, thinking, well, with Lossiemouth, she had a hard race at Kempton, and then she fell, it wasn't the prettiest of falls, was it, at Leopardstown? So he's probably thinking that, hasn't had a great prep with her. She could probably still be 95% and still win this, I think, such is her quality. But there's just something niggling at me in the back of my mind that, could we try and get her beat? And Joyeuse, I must admit, I backed her last week and thought I was very clever just before she was supplemented, thinking, well, Lossiemouth's not going to go here. Brighter Days Ahead has just been announced to go for the Champion Hurdle, and Joyeuse could go off favourite. Backed her at 6 or 7 to 1, and she's now 12 to 1. So that's what you get when you try and be clever. But I do think she's around about 5 to 1, 9 to 2 in a market without Lossiemouth. And I think Joyeuse is the coming force, in this division. She's had a very, very short career to date, but a lot of that career, if not all of it, has been lined up to try and get her to the old Schweppes, with the William Hill Handicap Hurdle at Newbury this year. And she proved that she was, streets ahead of her handicap mark on that occasion. Nico de Boinville travelled around the inside, pushed the button, and she just ran away from horses in the final furlong there. I think she'll be fine at this trip. I think she'll improve again. I think she's probably a rock solid 9 to 2, 5 to 1 each way play in the market without Lossiemouth.
Oh, I think we're in big disagreement on this race then, Will, for all that we respect each other's opinions, because I got a feeling that Joyeuse is a bit of Birico Lordy from last year. I think JP just wants to run her in the race, which is why he supplemented her, rather than sort of it being Nicky Henderson's plan to say, oh, let's step into this company. She will be a really interesting one, because Gordon Elliott's really keen on Woodham, isn't he, in that Martin Pipe, which we'll come on to at the very last race that we do. But now she's this sort of price. She could be one for a little contingency double across the two of those if she does go and run well. But yeah, I think Lossiemouth will be fine. I also think slightly with the Lossiemouth stuff, I do get it that maybe her preparation hasn't been fine, but there's punches down, isn't there? She can go and crack at Brighter Days Ahead and Constitution Hill. Nicky Henderson said he's going to come over. And I think there's a part, if you imagine a horse had that bad fall, which it was, you want to give him a confidence booster next time, don't you? And I think he's looked at this and just thought, this is the equivalent of running in a race where she might be a lot shorter priced and a much easier assignment, get her confidence back, and then we'll have a crack later, because she is only 6. Like, she can come back for a Champion Hurdle next year, whereas Constitution Hill couldn't. I mean, he couldn't run in the mares either, could he? Because he's not that way. But it's a great race. I'm glad it's happening as it is, but I guess I'll be treading with a slight level of caution about Lossiemouth given the prep coming in here. But it's more than forecasting her price. For me, she should be a 3s on poke if she was fully sound. So getting this sort of price about her just makes it just a nice bet. Again, don't need to raise mistakes, just make more money because it's a bigger price. Right, Champion Hurdle for us now, Will. This one can't take very long because Stateman's got cheap pieces on for the first time as well. So that's we know something's been up with him, but he doesn't even run his best races at Cheltenham. They're now potentially reaching for something else, which I would look at as a negative for a horse that's the reigning champion hurdler, now running here 12 months later in sort of different conditions in terms of what he's doing. I can't have anything other than the top two possibly winning this one, but I really do think the Constitution Hill is just better than she is. So do you think he just wins? Ooh, we may have frozen Will out at some point. I did think he was being politely quiet there. So if you give us a second, we'll make sure he comes up. But yeah, we haven't got the full clash of Lossiemouth being in here as well as Brighter Days Ahead and Constitution Hill. But we do, of course, have him in here and we do have her. So it's a good, decent clash. Well, you guys, if you give me a second, I'll just send Will. Oh, he's back. Will, you're back.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's either you or it's the streaming software, but we're back. So basically, I've said the Constitution Hill can't lose, and I only see the winner coming from the top two in there. But I really do think he is just superior to Brighter Days Ahead for all that she looks a nice progressive horse. Start of the season when she won, I think King of Kingsfield could have beaten her the first time up, or if they were trying to get her beat, and they didn't seem they were. When State Man headed her, I thought he would have beaten her, and she did well to rally after. But the Christmas run for all it was phenomenal. She won't be able to do that to a horse like Constitution Hill. And if that was tactically how she could have got him beat, they've wasted the dart, haven't they, by doing it at Christmas and showing the secret. So I think it's just going to set it up for Constitution Hill to be a good, like a proper good thing. I think he just wins.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I do, but I think he'll know he's been in a race though as well. I don't think it'll be, similar to the international hurdle or probably in some degree similar to the Christmas hurdle in that they've gone a good tempo, and that'll be what happens here. I think the one thing they're hanging their hat onto is that if you just go an end-to-end gallop, not let him have a breather if at all possible, and then because I think with Brighter Days Ahead, her cruising speed is high, and she can keep going off it. She doesn't have that turn of foot, I don't think, but she can keep going off that high tempo and keep that up and keep rolling. And the hope to beat Constitution Hill is that you can just get him to the point where he is at that level where he's going as fast as he can as well, without Nico de Boinville being able to take a breather at any stage. And I think the quality of Constitution Hill previously has always been that you can never get him to that point. The only time it was tried, or it happened probably by chance, was in the Supreme, where they went a million miles an hour, and I think he got the course record or something, didn't he, that day? Or absolutely blew the stopwatch to pieces. And I could see that happening probably here again, for all that it'll be softish ground, but it's going to be end to end. They're going to try and drag him to depths that he's never been to before. Can't wait to watch it. I think it'd be amazing to watch. I think he is going to prove that he's the best hurdler of our generation. If there was a bet in the race, I'd be looking at the market without both of those top two. And Golden Ace, I think, is the value bet here, because as you've said with State Man, I think the cheap pieces are almost a bit of an admission that, well, either the case that he's not quite good enough and they need to find something else, or he's not been up to form this year. And I think it's probably a combination of both, really. And his form is not, for all that he's a champion hurdle holder, his form purely on just looking at the horses that he's beaten, it's not great, is it? So I think you could get him beat for third. And I think Golden Ace proved that she was superior to Burdett Road last time at Wincanton when things weren't for her in terms of tight track, soft ground. I think at Cheltenham, on slightly better ground, I think she can easily finish third here. And she's 6-1 each way in the market without those big two with Bet365 as we speak. So that's obviously a 5-runner race as such, 6-1 each way, two places. That's a cracking bet, I think, to me.
That is very tempting, isn't it? I kind of don't like what Jeremy Scott's done with her, though, which is the fact that he said if Lossiemouth didn't go to the mare, she'd have gone there. And it's I think he's probably, I don't know whether it's an admission of he knows that she's not.
Well, I saw today it's the owner's decision.
But that's where the bet, like you said, there comes in nicely, because they're not. I don't think they're going to try and win a race with her. I think they're going to ride her for a position. It'd be nice to say come second or third in the champion hurdle if it spans out that way. But yeah, I'm team Constitution now, and fingers crossed he gets it done for us. Right, Will. The Boodles is always one of the easiest ones to solve. It did get easier because Paul Townend's jocked up in a handicap. So for all that we wouldn't have known which one he would have picked of Willie Munnins' 85 that have been entered for this race, he is on Sunny Bill. So I'll be honest, I haven't done enough work since final declarations because we've now got loads of horses wearing first-time headgear, got lots of horses with tongue ties, got lots of horses that have been jocked up by, I don't know, I don't want to say different jockeys than we'd expect, but I do think there is some pecking orders, especially with the Joseph horses, that actually like Mark Walsh riding Put Your Hands Together and JJ going on Beyond Your Dreams, I think people may have seen it could have been a different way around. So I need to do a bit more work in there, but I think it's interesting with Sunny Bill, with Paul Townend being on there, because it's one of those after Absurd one, everyone says it was his only festival, like handicap ride, and maybe for all that he's ridden in this race before, he was only just beaten on Gaelic Warrior, wasn't he? And I don't think he's just throwing himself into handicaps just for the sake of it. So I need to do some substantial work to find a reason to actually want to back him, other than it's Paul Townend on there. But also at the same time, if it comes to him winning it, and he only has that and one other handicap ride, hopefully for you, Car Geese in the county. But if it turns out he has two handicap rides and they both win, I almost don't want to miss him in the fact that he's 14s or 16s. But it is a price-driven thing. Holy See for William Durkin. I definitely want to quickly mention this horse because they put cheap pieces on for the first time. Now, this horse was backed strongly into favourite for the Nace rated Novices Hurdle, which has produced 4 of the last 6 winners of this race. He was battered that day, got beaten 10 lengths, but they put cheap pieces on, so maybe there's an excuse. And relatively, the horses that did win that race, which for all they beat him by 10 lengths, they went up to like the mid 130s. So I wonder whether William Durkin, who won that race last year, decided actually, if I win that race, I can't win at Cheltenham. Whereas if I go into that race as a prep run, get beaten, I don't get my mark moved as much as it could do. And this could be the day. He's got Oakley Brown taking £5 off as well. He's a 25 to 1 poke. And it is that type of race, the Boodles, isn't it? So it tends to maybe come up at a bit of a price that you could look back as an afterthought and think, well, they fancied it earlier in the season. It just didn't get the job done. So I've got way too many on my mind, Will. This could be a whole preview show on its own. But you were keen on Stencil when we did the preview before. You must still be keen on Stencil, given the way that the Irish were weighted, because a lot of them got hammered, didn't they?
Yeah, well, that was the I just sort of had an inkling that might happen, really, and Stencil got the mark I hoped he would get, and I'm sure Connections hoped he would get as well, because it reflects on what his French mark is, and it reflects on the bare form of where he's finished in relation to East India Dock and the other horses that were well beaten in that Triumph trial at Trials Day. But I think the bare form of it on that occasion doesn't do justice to just how good that form is and just how strongly run that race was. Because East India Dock, purely talking about speed figures and what he's done, he's a mile clear in the Triumph Hurdle, absolute mile clear. Now, there are other horses that can improve, don't get me wrong. And Stencil, equally, is a mile clear of all the horses that he's taking on here. And there's a reason to believe that we haven't seen the best yet of Stencil at all. He won a couple of smallish races over in France before being given too much to do, which actually, looking back, looks like it was perhaps a view. I mean, the plan for this had probably been in place at that stage already then. And even at Trials Day, he probably could have finished a bit closer to East India Dock had he really wanted to, but he was so far clear of the third that, why do that? Why give him a harder race than you need to? So I think he's a potential Grade 1 hurdler, this horse Stencil, and he's not even top weight in the Juvenile Handicap. So I think if he runs his race at Trials Day or even improves slightly from it, then the others have got a real job on their hands. There's lots of horses that you can make up into potential plots for. This one did this that day when he was held up at the back at Nace or Fairyhouse. But Stencil, I think, is light years ahead of the others.
Nice. And that's good as well, because it was confident when we did the day one preview back then. You sound just as confident, if not more confident, now we've got final declarations in there, Will. So we will move ourselves on to the National One Novices Handicap Chase. This has been a race that was changed for this season, wasn't it? We've got a full field of 18 in here, whereas normally a National One Chase, we might only get a handful of horses in here. Looks real good, Will. And the more I look at horses in here, the deeper and deeper I find this. I feel like there's cases you could make for bundles of horses. Transmission was the one that I was quite sweet on before. I still think it is a type of race that will really suit him. I'll keep going, guys, while we're waiting for Will to join again. But yeah, I was keen on Transmission. I still think it's a race that's going to really suit him as a Dower stayer. But undoubtedly, there are some other horses in it that will also be suited by it. think there's firms, although we've got the 18 runners, I'll just double check now, but I think we've got some firms offering us 5 places in this race. So from a fancy of a like other horses on the day, or maybe across the rest of the week. Welcome back, Will. But yeah, so I was just saying, Will, that it's a deep race. The more I look at it, the deeper it gets, the more chances I can make for him. But I would say that while they've changed the rules and we've got 18 runners and it is a good field, there are 5 places up for grabs. So there might be a case of sticking something in here, maybe in, I don't know, each way doubles with either something else on the first day or across races later in the week. But I was keen on Transmission. I'm pleased that Patrick's on him because he did obviously win on him earlier this season. And I do think this is a horse that has got his own ideas about things. So that familiarity does look like a positive. I kind of thought Paul Townend would have been on Captain Cody, but Danny Mullins is riding him, isn't he? So that would be a negative, I would say, towards him. But there's plenty of horses that are further down there that you could make a bit of a squeeze for at bigger prices. I haven't done this one enough since we've got final declarations. I would say that Transmission now about the 5-1 probably does look short enough. I think you were. Were you keen on Haiti Couleurs, or were you just keen on Haiti Couleurs holding up the form with Transmission? Or
a bit of both, really. Yeah, a bit of both. I think that Haiti Couleurs has done nothing but improve over the last 12 months. Massively. We don't know where his ceiling is at all yet. I think genuinely he could have gone in the Brown Advisory this year and had a decent chance if he continues that improvement. They obviously wanted to protect his chase mark, so he ran at Newbury, didn't he? Ran a really creditable race there, I thought, on that occasion. As good a trial as any, really. And he's just, to me, he's just a really classy, relentless galloper, Haiti Couleurs. If he improves on what he's done, well, I think he's the best horse in the race. Let's put it that way in terms of just raw ability, and he's got scope to improve. Again, similar to Stencil, really, he's not off top weight. There are horses that have been rated slightly higher than him, but I think he's the best horse in the race on what he's done. He's got room to improve. I think the extra distance will actually help him because he is that relentless galloper. I think he'll be the type of horse that I could see how you'd think Transmission might get closer or surpass him, but I think that some of those yards that Transmission made up late on were cheap yards, if you will. I think Haiti Couleurs might just drag a few into a place they've not been to before that turn for home. And then hopefully he'll just keep on galloping and not leave himself vulnerable. Because I do think he's really classy and he's a relentless galloper. So, again, sort of keeping it simple, really, in the 2 handicaps that closed day one, Stencil and Haiti Couleurs. I think if they both run their races, they're in the frame at the very least.
Oh, I love it, Will. And for all that, I get like prices relative to the chance of horses, and it's all dependent on what the fields are and all that sort of stuff. But as much as I'm fairly sweet on some shorty ones in there, even we've got the Change Man that I've talked about before in the Ultima, they found their way to where they are in the market because of their chance, really. And when we previewed these ones before, like the Change Man wasn't favourite back then, Stencil was vying for favouritism but wasn't favourite, and we've got Haiti Couleurs that was definitely not favourite back then because Now Is the Hour was the one, wasn't it? So they find their way there. Well, it's confidence boosting for all us punters out here because we're thinking to ourselves, well, if it is a day that the favourites go in, then, well, we're going to get paid all right because we fancy a few of them. It's probably not worth doing naps for the day unless you want to quickly throw up a nap.
Best bet would probably be a Stencil Haiti Couleurs each way double, I reckon.
Oh, my God, I love it. Okay, that's going to be struck. I'll go for something. And obviously, this is all gamble responsibly. We'll do our actual columns with what we fancy. But I really do think the Copette de Board wins. And I really think the Lossiemouth's just too big a price. So I would be happy to double the pair of them up. Although I've got Copette de Board in way too many doubles. I need to stop doing that. We will, though, move on to day 2, Will, if you fancy it.
Sure.
Right.
Roll on.
Turner's Novices Hurdle. We still don't 1000% know where Final Demand or the Yellow Clay's going. There's been a bit of up and down between both of those. Even Gordon's said more recently that he hasn't ruled out the Albert Bartlett, essentially. He'll see what the ground comes up as, which is completely not the opposite, but he's never hinted in the slightest that he would ever go for an Albert Bartlett up until recently. So I'm a little bit nervous that he might send him that way for all that I think this better ground and this race will suit him down to a T. So I'm still Team Yellow Clay. But I would say before I had this 100%, he definitely comes here. Now I'd say I'm sort of 85-15. I think there's a small chance where he does go for an Albert Bartlett. But we'll find out tomorrow when we get declarations. So not long to find that out. And if he's in here, I think he wins. If he's not in here, then I think Final Demand would be the one to go and beat because I'm still anti the New Lion. I put a Belliano yesterday in the EBF Novices final because I've tried to get on board with the New Line form on multiple occasions, but I looked at it and thought, even if the New Line is just a low 140s horse, which is where I've sort of pitched him at, then that Belliano was handicapped well, I thought, after being just a few lengths behind him at Chepstow, running off 125. And he probably didn't run his race yesterday, but he was beaten well out of sight. And I know people will say the New Line's form, well, 4 winners have come out of the race since, but 3 of them were like 1 to 10 or shorter. So I just don't think what he's done justifies him being the price that he is. I think he's a bit of a hype horse, but I guess at some point I'm getting nervous because the money's coming for him and he's like short of 6 to 4. But I think that's just the stability and the fact that Final Demand maybe could have gone somewhere else, and even the Yellow Clay to an extent. So I think the New Line's got adrift at some point, but the more he gets backed, the more I fear I'm completely and utterly wrong. But I think this horse has been massively overhyped for a long time. So I'm anti the New Lion and I'm praying the Yellow Clay comes here. So I've got my rant out the way, Will. Did you have any more positive, constructive views on the Turners, though?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a strong opinion at this stage. I think it's tricky for Connections declaring for the Wednesday because they can't have a view of how the ground actually is on the Tuesday. I know you'd hope it's just genuine good to soft, but with watered ground sometimes, and I mean, there are a few small showers forecast for Wednesday itself as well. So it's just hard to predict. And, you know, for them having to declare in a race and then that even if they declare and pull out, they can't then declare for a later race, say the Albert Bartlett for Final Demand and the Yellow Clay. So it's a really tricky position they find themselves in. But yeah, I wouldn't have a strong opinion on the race really until we get the final field. There's 1 or 2 at slightly bigger prices that are just worth half an interest, you know, should they actually be declared. The main one potentially is No Questions Asked for Ben Pauling, who's probably a second string. But what he did at Huntingdon, I thought was pretty impressive, I must admit. You know, he beat 2 decent horses. He finished second to a decent horse, Calafet on Vol, and he beat Jax Jr., who's a very good horse. And the 3 of them pulled a mile clear of the remainder in that Sydney Banks. I think he's going to run here. He ran a 5th time to get a handicap mark, but I see Ben Jones is jocked up on him. So if they do come here, he could be one to maybe look at some of those without markets or some of the extra place markets, or potentially you can get match bets on a lot of bookies these days as well if you can find something priced up slightly shorter that he is, you know, likely to outrun. But he's definitely one to play somehow if he does come here, because I think his, like I said, that Huntingdon form is probably going to be overlooked because it's Huntingdon. You know, it's a listed race at Huntingdon. No one will think that that's going to produce a horse to run well at the Cheltenham Festival. So, but he was pretty good.
Oh, I like it. And there is a chance that the race does get decimated completely if Final Demand and the Yellow Clay both went for a Bartlett, but that's a world that's never going to happen. I think my like, not issue with the New Line type stuff, because I do like to get a bit of cover in races. And I think if you potentially buy in at the right price on horses, you can get sort of cover in there. He's never appealed to me at any time at the prices that he's always been. He'd be very easy if he was a horse sat in ours, say third favourite 8 to 1 from you, but me to be able to go, well, it's not beyond the realms of possibility that he can improve enough to do it. But I can't have him as such a short price favourite. So probably I'm going to have egg on my face the way that the market's gone with him, but I can't wait to find out, to be fair. And fair play to people that are on at juicy prices and that have a different opinion. I mean, as long as you're right. Good luck to you. Right. I sound so bitter that I will. Right. The Brown Advisory Novices
even started yet.
I know. But the Brown Advisory Novices Chase, another race where since we previewed, like, a horse has collapsed in price, probably more so because Croke Park isn't coming to the festival. But I've always thought Croke Park was 2.5 mile and wasn't coming for this race anyway. So when that was potentially being factored into the market, we talked about before, I just couldn't believe that Ballyburn was like a 7 to 4 poke, which we said should be closer to an even money poke, which he is about now. He's top price 5 to 4, generally even money shot in here. When we get confirmations tomorrow, I probably only see that price going one way. I don't know what the final field will look like, but you'd imagine with Haiti Couleurs changing man already declared for Tuesday, they can't come in here. You'd be hard pressed to think that any of the rest that are in here wouldn't run. So I think it'll be as it stands at the moment. But Ballyburn just wins. I do really like better days ahead. I think he's the one that could potentially beat him, but it would definitely need Ballyburn to underachieve, in my opinion, to go and do this. And I know everyone will talk about, well, it's the 3 miles and the stamina and all those bits and pieces in there, but it's not I know we think about these horses as potentially Gold Cup horses of the future, but it isn't 3 miles, 2.25 or 2.5 furlongs like the Gold Cup actually is. It's run on this course, which is a bit of a speedier type of a track as well. And you look at the horses that have won it in the past, they're not all Gold Cup boats. You've got Factor File that's be favourite for Ryanair. You've got Long Presse that probably does get like a bit further, but maybe is a questionable stare at the trip. Ballyburn's just rock solid, and I think the even money about him is where he should be, but still probably a little bit of juice in there now. Will, do you think there's any reason to take him on?
No, not in the outright. I think he's if you can get anything shade of odds against, you know, which hopefully might be come the day, because bookies will want to perhaps take, you know, some of these short price favourites on. I think he's, in terms of the real short priced horses over the course of the first couple of days, in terms of actual value for money at the price they're at, I think he is the best of them. I really do. I think I'd have him, you know, a good bit shorter. I really would. I think he's been crying out for, well, I say he's been crying out. His run style sometimes over the last year has not cried out for further, but he's gradually getting there. He's bred absolutely for stamina. He's got 4 relatives who have won over 3 miles and further. He's by Flemingsfirth out of an old Vic mare. Should stay forever on pedigree, but he's got that pedigree, and he's also got a real touch of class. And actually, what he did at Kempton when he was beaten by Gino, I think time might tell that could actually be close to a career best run from him, given the set of circumstances that he faced. Because 2 miles around Kempton on decent ground for a horse that's bred to stay forever, the ability he must have to be able to lie up with Sir Gino. It's a shame we're not going to see Sir Gino, because you know, I'd put him in the potential sort of Sprinter Sacra type category in terms of the quality that he's got as a 2 mile chaser. So for Ballyburn to do what he did against him and still hang on his coattails, I know it burst his bubble, it burst his winning bubble, but I think it was a massive run. He won very easily at Leopardstown in the DRF. I think he's got a huge chance, a much better chance than his price suggests. I'll probably have a look at the without market so on the day again. Gorgeous Tom, I thought was very, very interesting. I sneakily think Henry de Bromhead might have a good festival, because he had a quiet period December, January, and perhaps one of the things weren't right with some of the horses, but you can see him having just had a refresh. You know, the horses have come back, they're healthy, they're running well. He's had winners over the last couple of weeks. I think he'll have a really good festival. I do. And Gorgeous Tom is a horse who's fresh for the first, been for 3 and a bit months. He finished like an absolute train in the Dreammoor. I think he's crying out for stepping up to this kind of trip. He's one that I want to see what the ground is like, because I wouldn't want it, you know, the softer side of good to soft. I'd want it the good side of good to soft for him, because I think he really relishes a sound surface. But he's probably one to look at in the market without. But the actual race market, I wouldn't want to side against Ballyburn, and if he's odds against, I'd probably side with him.
Yes, just what we like to hear, Will. So again, I do fancy a few at the sort of towards the head of the market, but not all of them. We're not on the new line, but yeah, Ballyburn we said was a good price, and I still think he probably is about that. Right, Coral Cup, first handicap for day 2 for us to go into. Be Aware's found his way to being 5-1 favourite in here. There's a few horses that might not come. Woodhu's second favourite at the moment. Martin Pipe bound as far as I'm concerned. Been a bit of money for Comfort Zone recently. Ballyadam, that's been second in multiple races at the festival, it's like still a 14-1 poke. I think there's going to probably be a bit of, like, later money for him. As you say, Henry's potentially going to have a good week. I think this one's a tricky one, because I'm it's not so much blindsided like the Changing Man, but where the Changing Man, I think, has got the boxes ticked for winning an Ultima, I think Be Aware has the ability. The improvement that he's going to find from the trip is a box ticked. The fact that it's Dan Skelton doing his more old school type plotting with him, where he's not running him up until the festival, he's waited a little bit with the horse. I do think it's going to be very hard for Be Aware to be beaten. My only concern with him is he does look a bit of a buzzy type horse, and I wonder if the hustle and bustle of the Coral Cup actually is going to be what he really wants, whether we can see him to his full effect. So I can understand why he's favourite. I think he deserves to be the price that he is. I'd want to just get some cover in the race. I'm not 100% sure what that cover is at the minute, Will. Comfort Zone I do quite like, apart from the fact that everyone seems to like him now. So needs to do a tiny bit more work on the Coral Cup. But I do believe that if Be Aware can overcome the circumstances of the race, which typically in a race like a Coral Cup, you'd want to find a battle-hardened horse that would handle those conditions. You'd want that to be a box that's ticked. I'd take the risk with Be Aware that I still think he could get away with it, because I think he's a phenomenally well handicapped horse. That Great Wood run behind Burdett Road looked really good now, and I fancied him that day. I put him up, and he nearly got there. But even with Dysart Enos back in third, I still think the form of that stands up better than what a lot of the horses have done in here. So I think he deserves to be favourite. I think he's got a good chance of winning it. Is there anyone that you fancy away from Be Aware, one that I could potentially be looking to get save on, Will?
Yeah, I've backed a horse in this, and also for the Martin Pipe, both non-runner, no bet, and that's Park of Kings for Paul Nolan. I think he is a horse. He's already in the range of getting into the Martin Pipe. I think he's number 22 on that list, and he probably needs, I think, 14 or 15 to come out for the Coral Cup. I'd probably prefer the track of the Coral Cup for him, the old course. But look, whichever way he goes, he'll definitely. Well, he already does carry my cash non-runner no bet in both of those races. I think he's got so much more to give. He's only a 7-year-old, campaigned fairly sparingly. He's quite a sort of later maturing type. His last 2 runs have been really, really eye-catching for me at Nate and then Leopardstown, where he's done much the best of horses being held up off the pace, off slow tempos on both of those runs over 2.5 miles. I think he's crying out for a big field mid-range trip race where he can settle and actually suits horses held up in that particular style, which generally both of those races do, the Coral Cup and the Martin Pipe. You don't often see too many horses make all in those, apart from there was one in the Coral Cup a few years ago, wasn't there, the mare that did it for Paul Hennessy, heaven help us. But generally, it suits that type of horse. So Park of Kings for Paul Nolan. In terms of Be Aware, I think he's a horse. I mean, at his price right now, 9-2, 5-1. I think with him, you could literally wait to press the button 30 seconds before the off, because how much shorter can he be than that? If all the preliminaries go well, if he gets down to the start, if he looks as if he's on really good terms with himself, looks as if he's in good heart, is he going to be shorter than 9-2, 5-1 at that particular point? No, I don't think he would be, would he? No, so I think he's one of those.
So I was just going to say that's the same with like a Langadan, because Langadan being a hold-up horse as well, the SPs of some of his races would be 7-2, but he goes off at 10-1 on the exchanges because the in-running layers want to get the ones that are prominently ridden, and Be Aware to be out the back. So that's a very good point in there as well, because he could still go off 5-1 with the bookies, but you might be able to get closer to. I reckon you would get closer to double figures on the machine if you waited for it.
Yeah. I echo your sentiments in terms of his chance and the form he's got.
Nice. Well, fingers crossed. I mean, I know people will say it's boring when we come to we look at this stuff and we're like making cases for favourites or whatever, but they've earned their right to be in those positions. And again, when we've done these previews a little while ago, not that our opinions are going to change the stuff, but we talked about horses when they were different prices. So we'll continue to move on. The cross-country handicap chase, Will, talked about Stumptown and Air. I still really fancy him for this race. I think he's made for him. I don't mind how much he goes up in the weights. I just think he's in the form of his life. He's on a progressive upward curve, and in the scheme of carrying £8 more in this as a penalty, then you've got a horse like Katati Dory that's £12 higher than he was last time out. I know Katati Dory is far less unexposed, but I feel like it's easier to do it in a cross-country race where a lot of these horses won't be finishing the race, or they won't really enjoy the discipline. They'll just be doing it for the sake of it. As much as we might get the 18 runners that will be in here, I reckon 10 of them probably won't even have a chance of actually winning the race. So he's only got to give that weight away to a couple of horses as far as I'm concerned. But again, from the price stuff, when we talked about the last preview, I thought I'd be getting 3-1 or bigger, maybe even some 7-2 about him. Still top price 5-2, despite the fact that Galvin, Bustleton, Mr. Coffee, Vanillier that you mentioned, Isio Madrick, they've all been supported. So I still believe he's going to push out in price. I've had a little bit on him. I want to back a bit more on him nearer the time. But Vanillier was the one that you made a good case for last time. Are you still on the same team sheet with Vanillier this time?
Yeah, I would be. I think he, on his day, Vanillier's a genuine Grade 1 animal. It's sort of similar to that here case, really. We've got a high class animal, and then you've got to try and translate that to this particular discipline. You've got to translate that level of ability, which I think Zanahiyr has proved in the Ultima that he could potentially do that because of his run in the Galway Plate, his run in last year's festival. And with Vanillier, I think that there's reasons to think that on pure ability, he's, if not the best horse in the race, vying for that level with Galvin, really, in terms of their kind of raw ability that they've got. I mean, Vanillier is obviously a festival winner. He's finished in the places in a Grand National. And again, he's not even close to top weight because of what Stumptown did in this discipline back before Christmas. Now, if you watch that race again, Vanillier was in the race. He didn't have any headgear on, and he jumped and travelled really nicely for a long way before just fading late on, perhaps because of fitness. Probably wasn't completely tuned up. That was Stumptown's time to shine, if you will. I just wonder whether now, with the blinkers on at Punchestown last time out, which seemed to really spark Vanillier into life, with his experience around the course and the fact that the handicap has been pretty kind on him, giving him the mark he's got, despite being such a good animal. I think at the prices he's a good each way bet. As to do I think is Bustleson, actually. I don't think he's quite the same classy type of animal, but he's taken to the discipline quite well as well when he's been round here before, and he's got the headgear back on as well. So he's kind of the classic case of the actual more handicapper who genuinely is very, very well handicapped. Not that I don't like Stumptown. I mean, he was incredibly impressive. He'll run his race again. I just wonder whether that was his time to really show how good he was, and whether he'll have things a bit trickier on this occasion.
Yeah, it's a good looking race, because obviously before it was a handicap, and then it's gone back to, well, it was a handicap, then it got changed to the race that we know it as for the last few years, where it was just a punter's benefit as far as I was concerned, because you just have a short price Tiger Roll, but they give you 6-4 and you could steam into them. It looks a very good competitive race. I'm hoping it pans out as we're expecting, that there are a few fighting in the finish, or if there's a runaway winner, I hope it's Stumptown. Vanillier can be a never near a second. Thank you very much. Right, another race which I hope is going to be as plain sailing as I believe it is in my head is the Queen Mother Champion Chase, Will, because no Gaelic Warrior, potential fly in the ointment in my eyes, because for all that he's been pants this season, we know that he has a lot of ability inside him if he wants to tune it up. And I was talking about John Bond when we did the other preview about the fact that I think he's better now, and I think he's going to set a bar that some of these horses just can't actually achieve. I know a Nergamine, if he gets the right conditions, could probably post a higher figure than John Bond has done up to now, but at the stages of the career they're in, I just don't see how anyone beats John Bond. And I know we've got the curse of the favourites in the Queen Mother Champion Chase, but none of those favourites that got beaten were John Bond. They're all different types of horses, and I just think the way that he's been campaigned this season, it's been absolutely just perfect for him. Like, there's no horse that's coming into a Cheltenham Festival that's got a better preparation for a championship race than him, as far as I'm concerned. Constitution obviously missed his fight in fifth at the start of the season, but obviously has turned things around and he's fine. You got Tiapu in the stairs early, got beaten the Hatton's Grace for the first time in the last 3 years. Gallop and Deschamps got turned over in the John Durkan, which is still fine, but obviously his price went out at some point, whereas John Bond's just done nothing wrong all season. I think he's better than ever. Yeah. And the fact that Gaelic Warrior came out, I thought to myself, well, now we're going to end up with a 1-2 John Bond, and I won't be able to get stuck into him. But 4-5, you can get 5-6 in places. For some reason, the bookies are going to want to, the layers are going to want to lay him essentially. But I see no other bet in the race other than just John Bond, and I think he's one to sort of get stuck into. So to maybe temper my enthusiasm a little bit, Will, is there something I'm overlooking with John Bond?
No, I don't think so. No, I think it would only be kind of that bizarre hoodoo that he seems to have at the festival or Cheltenham generally. Even though he's won races here, every now and again there just seems to be something which derails him a little bit. But I think that's probably more relevant. He's when he's been a younger horse, when he's been slightly less mature. I mean, everything he's done in the last 12 months, I think he's been rock solid. Attitude wise, jumping. We know he's a classy animal on his day, but he just seems to be getting classier and classier, and he's backing that up with his professionalism. So I can't see myself finding a bet in the Champion Chase, I must admit. Not looking to take John Bond on, but equally in the without, I don't know. It's hard to pick through. It may be if Henry de Bromhead did have a good first day, you could make a case for Quilixios being slightly overpriced on what he's done. You can forgive him, I think, his last 2 runs, really, because they came right in the depths of when Henry's horses weren't perhaps 100% right. So he could be one that does just bounce back to a little bit of form. Does that mean he's going to go and challenge Marine Nationale and Solness for second place and 1 or 2 others? Possibly. I mean, he did meet Marine Nationale earlier on this season. So you could make a small case for that. But think the main thing for this race is I'm actually of the ilk now where I'd really love to see John Bond win it. That the heart is sort of outweighing anything that the head thinks really in terms of this race. I'd love to see him win it because I think he deserves to.
Yeah. And it'll be so good as well, not just for the sport, but good for Nicky Henderson having a whitewash last year where he couldn't even run half of his horses to now come back and just prove that they're not necessarily prove there was something necessarily wrong last year, but just to prove that obviously bad things happened, didn't they? And then you can just come back a year later and just do it next time. You don't have to do everything in the plan that you've got it set up as. Right, Grand Annual Will. Speaking of not having to do it in the same way every single time, Unexpected Party was hidden in plain sight last year. Some phenomenal handicapping right from early in the season. You could tell this is where he was going, and he duly obliged. This year, I'm not 100% sure it's been as plotty in terms of they've been able to manipulate his mark enough to make him really well handicapped, because obviously he's won the race, he's got the mark that he's got, and knowing the yard who they are, no matter what he does this season, they're going to have a view that he's probably coming back for this 10-year-old for it now, isn't he? But all that said, 7-1 top prize at the front of the market, I think he's one that has to go in sort of your doubles or play spotty type bets, because I think he has got a proper chance. My mate Mozzie's very interesting. Jazzy Matty's pretty interesting in here as well, but they're all pretty skinny enough. There's 7 or 8 runners, especially at this stage before we've got final declarations, where they're all single figures, and I think the market is going to have to sort itself out a little bit in here. So I need to take a bit more time on a Grand Annual. I want to see the jockey bookings. I want to see the final field in here, because I think there's going to be a couple at bigger prices that I could make a bit of a case for. But as it stands for you now, Will, Grand Annual, have you got a nailed on bet or a nailed on shortlist?
No, I haven't actually. No, I'm similar to you really. I want to see what the ground is like. Day one, that'll come into calculations. I mean, if it was very much on the better side, the likes of JPR1, my mate Mozzie, they would all come into it definitely. If it was probably on the softer side, you're looking at the likes of Liberty Hunter, although I think I saw today Liberty Hunter had been confirmed that he's going to go for the Champion Chase, but until he's declared, obviously that's still there. Sneaky ones at bigger prices, again, ground dependent. Lucinda Russell's 2 horses are interesting. Traprain Law, if it was soft, Primoz, if it is better. They're horses that I think they might be more for Aintree or Air further down the line, but it's interesting that they're coming here potentially with those 2, because I think on their day they're certainly not also runs in a race such as this, because I'm not sure this is if you take Liberty Hunter out and perhaps JPR1, it's possibly not the best Grand Annual that you've ever run. Agreed.
Yeah, and that's what I feel like with this year, that there's too many I could not dismiss, but more for the reason that I couldn't really build up the case strongly for too many in the field as it stands at the moment. So it might just be a race where I'm just not going to ever find out who the winner is, but haven't spent too much time. Well, I've spent a lot of time delving in every race, but haven't spent too much time since our last preview trying to find the winner of this one. This will be a sit and wait. So we want to give you the winners of every single race, but you'll have to just check the columns on the day to find out who wins the Grand Annual for that one, I'm afraid. We'll move on to the Champion Bumper. We lost Wind Beneath My Wings. Well, I've said that in the wrong way. We've lost him for the Cheltenham Festival anyway. I'm not going to make it here, which is a big disappointment for connections, but I think it's disappointing for fans and stuff as well involved, because Willie Mullins' pecking order it will sort itself out when Patrick decides to ride Copacabana. But before then, it was a much of a muchness from the Irish lot, I would have thought. And I think Wind Beneath My Wings looks like it could be one for Team GB in the bumper, but of course he's not going to be here. So when we talked about it before, I said to you that I wasn't really that fussed by Game of Inches, as much as people said to me, "Oh, there's your Champion Bumper winner." I don't feel like I saw that. I've watched it back multiple times. Still think Copacabana and Bambino Fever are the 2 that I think have been the most impressive visually for me. Jodie Townend will ride Bambino Fever, which wouldn't be a negative, and then Patrick will be on Copacabana. So I'd be sort of them 2 against the field, but I feel like there's got to be something at a bigger price that looks like a really obvious good each way bet. I can't really find it, because no drama this end for Nichols. I do quite like him, because that Coupe de Boards that he beat for the Skeltons was quite a nice horse, but I can't see Paul Nichols winning a Champion Bumper. So Copacabana is where my mind's going, but the money's been strongly behind that. You'd rarely get a short one in a Champion Bumper anyway, so it'd be a sit and wait race. Wouldn't really be getting stuck into the Champion Bumper anyway, but if I did, it would be Bambino Fever and Copacabana against the field. Have you got any more excited about the bumper since we last talked about it, Will?
No, not massively. It's never a race. I can't think I've ever had a bet in it, I must admit. because there's just so many unknowns, really. Horses improving at different rates, so I can't get a handle on what they've done, what they might do, how they're going to handle Cheltenham, and obviously jockey bookings with the Mullins. Battalions can often confuse things as well, because it's not invariably the number one that goes and wins. If it did happen to be soft ground, one way or another, there's a horse that I think is a nice horse moving forward. Whether that means I'm going to back him for the race or whether he's going to run well, but Mossy Fen Road of Harry Derham's, I think, is a really nice horse going forward. It's going to be a lovely soft ground staying chaser. Whether that translates to him having a chance in the champion bumper, possibly not. It would need to be soft ground, but he is related to Cheltenham Festival winners as well. He's related to Fury Road, so he's an interesting horse. Look, it's not a bet, but definitely an interesting horse.
Happy days. Right, we won't waste more time on the bumper. Not that was a waste of time. It was good to get that little in, to be fair, Will. But we'll move on to the Thursday. But just before we do that, when I said about getting naps, someone did mention in the comments, maybe if we give a nap and then a lively outsider or a big price one, if we've got it. So I'll go first for the Wednesday. Ballyburn would be the nap, especially for anything odds against. I think is decent with him. I don't think I could find one at a big price for Wednesday as it stands, but I definitely feel like I'm going to find something in the Grand Daniel at a price. So again, come back, check out the column with it. The other races look fairly straightforward, I think, on the Wednesday, or fingers crossed anyway. So Will, from you, your best bet, and then maybe one at a price if you want to whip one down.
Yeah, got to be Ballyburn as well. Fully on that train, definitely. And Park of Kings if he runs in the Coral Cup. If not here, then the Martin Pipe race. But if he does run in the Coral Cup, then he's a sneaky outsider, definitely.
Beautiful. Right, we're moving on to Thursday, Will. Things start to get a little more competitive on Thursday. There's three, I want to say three handicaps, but is there four now because of the Jack Richards? There's Potemps play.
Yeah, there would be, yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard enough when there was three to try and go up, but it does mean it's good because if you manage to find the winner of all four of those handicaps and you've managed to do some sort of crazy little block bet, then you probably don't even need to go back to Cheltenham on the Friday. So it's good to have these decent betting heats. The Mayor's Novice Hurdle, to be fair, looks a pretty decent betting heat. We talked about the top two at the market when we did the preview last time, and I was on Maureen before she made a debut because I felt like if I didn't get her in the book before then, I might be in the position that I'm in now, which is she didn't really do a lot, and she's actually a bad price probably on what she has done, but at least she's in the book type bet. I'm getting sweeter and sweeter on 6.5 because I just go back through some of the runs that she's done, and there's bits of form you can always pick holes in, but there's some bits of her form where she's just got real, like her bumper women, she beat that Cole Cannon, even some of her flat runs are they're good. And I think sometimes the Mayor's Novice Hurdle, especially in recent years, it's just won by the horse that is at that time ready to go and win this type of race. She might not be the best horse in this field for the future, but I did like her. I thought Caroline Bamboo would probably be the best of the Willie Mullins lot. I do think Maureen's bubble's going to be burst. Hope I'm wrong for connections because it'd be a lovely story and great day out for all the syndicate people. But I think that's sort of a part of what's happened. You know, when you get your owners group type horses where they end up just being installed a bit shorter than they need to be because the bookies are a little bit worried they're going to get stuck in. So I think she's going to be a dirty little drifter on the day as well. Mayor's Novice Hurdle for you, Will. Did you have a strong opinion when we did this last one? I don't think you did.
No, I don't have a strong opinion on this. No, again, similar in regards to the champion bumper to some degree. I mean, there's more form on offer in this particular race, definitely, but there's still, so many unknown quantities here. I mean, Willie Mullins has got two horses that haven't even run for him here, and a couple that have only run once as well. So there's just potential for something out of left field here. If there was one that purely on form and times and what they've done and the types of horses they've beat at a slightly bigger price than 6.5. I like 6.5 a lot. But Jubilee Alpha, Paul Nicholls' horse, has done absolutely nothing wrong for me. I think she's crying out for the stamina test that 2 miles 1 on the new course presents as well. She's won her races through not just quality, but a bit of stamina in there to boot. So I think this type of race will really suit Jubilee Alpha. Where she fits in with 6.5, I'm not sure, is the honest answer. But, you could make a case for her being slightly too big a price, Jubilee Alpha, anyway.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing with her is she has looked a bit awkward going over hurdles, and I wonder whether it was greenness earlier on, but then I do just... It may just be that she's got a little bit more to learn, and obviously it is a novice's hurdle in it, but she definitely looked a little bit awkward. But if that is something they can get out of her, and she's not just an awkward horse forever. She's been like very good value for the races that she's won. Like she hasn't done it perfectly, is what I mean. And if she did, then she could have been a really impressive winner. So I can see that one. I think Hollygrove Charge Shah as well was another one at a big price that seems to be getting a few mentions. But how bad is this? Well, even at this stage, the bookies are offering 3 places a fifth of the odds. So I don't think there'll be any sort of the value in trying to take the ones off the front. But Mayor's Novices hurdle done. We'll move on, shall we?
Yeah. I'm just going to turn the light on, Dave, because it's getting very dark up north.
Oh, he's had an idea. Viewers, stay tuned to find out what Will's idea was.
There you go. Light bulb moment.
Oh, beautiful. Ding. The angel that is Will Smith is back with us. You've got
Angel of the North, as they say.
So the Novices Handicap Chase, I think, again, with the changes they've made, it's a good job they didn't have the turners going on, did it? Because we've got a 5-runner Arkle and we're going to have a 7-runner Brown Advisory. If we had another race for the Novices to go in, could have been a 2-runner race, 2-runner race, 2-runner race. But this does look a good competitive race, I'd say. Plenty of talk going towards Jaguar, Nürburgring, Asia Master, Springwell Bay, Firefox now that he's going to come here, Jordan's, Pick Rock. Just loads of horses that have been talked up that are fairly prominent towards the front of the betting on this. I guess for me, Will, I could make a case for plenty, I would say, in here. The ones that are more towards the head of the market, Asia Master, I was probably quite rude about when we did the preview last time, saying about the young lad that will have to ride him. But there was something I read or saw somewhere else on another preview night that he might not be able to do the weight if it gets so low. Like they might have needed a few to come out, but he's been very well backed and he has got some good form. And the lad that does ride him is decent. So I think the ones towards the front, I'm warming more towards Asia Master. Jaguar, I just think it would be so weird for him to drift last time, win as he did, and have bundles in hand. Like I think of those favourites we got towards the head of the market, that is a 5-1 poke. I think he feels a bit uncomfortable. Like I think he's just priced on the fact that because he drifted last time, everyone's expecting there's going to be loads more in the locker, as opposed to he drifted last time when he shouldn't have done, and actually that was when he was running at his better performance. So I think Asia Master might go a favourite, but did you have a strong opinion, like at this stage before we get the final decks, compared to when we did this before? Because it does look a pretty competitive race.
Yeah, it does. I think, with like a lot of the handicaps, at this stage now, you're far better off waiting until after declarations because you're going to get much better prices, much better place terms. And I think there's no finer example actually than this and the plate, because there's so many double entries, so many connections have seen fit to enter a novice in the plate, because you either go with the train of thought that you want to keep your novices up against other novices if you feel you've got one that jumps well enough and is experienced enough to be able to put that to good use, or you think, well, actually, if I'm a novice and I jump well, then I'm better off against older, more exposed handicappers. So that you can see both angles, and I haven't counted for sure, but I'm sure there's probably double figure horses that are entered in both. So it's going to be really tricky until we get those final decks. But the couple of horses that are definitely on the radar for both, if not one of them, Jordan's is one for Joseph O'Brien, horse who was second to Ampere Pass in the Grade 1 at Limerick at Christmas time. He's not been gifted a mark of 148, but I genuinely think he's, once you get to Punchestown and the likes, he'll be running in Grade 1s probably. So could be an interesting angle. I wouldn't be keen on Nürburgring, the other Joseph O'Brien. I know it looks like he's been plotted up, but he's very young for a start. For all he is a hardy type, but I wouldn't have him as a natural chaser. I think that he might just potentially be slightly found out around Cheltenham. Asia Master I could get, definitely. I think he's a very classy animal. Springwell Bay, whichever race he goes to, he's got to be of real credit. Because that form at Cheltenham twice behind Django Bay, and then when he won, they're both rock solid runs. You can't crab the way Moon d'Orange won as well at Trials Day. So many horses of interest. Masaccio, I heard, is going to wear first time cheap pieces in whichever race he runs in. So yeah, plenty of food for thought, I think, in both this and the plate. I must admit, I haven't had a bet in either just yet. There hopefully will be one when we've seen a bit more and a bit more water's flown under the bridge.
Yeah, it's good. Like it's a good, exciting race, isn't it? Especially from that betting and competitive angle of it. A few people in the comments are saying about Firefox in there as well, and I do like him. I think he is similar to you, like your Jordans. It's like a graded horse sat in a handicap. I didn't like him at 2.5 miles at the start of the season, but it's almost like they've made him into that type of horse because he wasn't as good back at 2 miles last time, was he?
Yeah. I'm not convinced I know what his best trip is. It's clear he is a graded horse, definitely. But again, he comes out of those novice hurdles last year with the likes of Slade Steel and Mystical Power. Just a bit lukewarm on the form. He's good, but I've not quite got a handle fully on Firefox just yet.
No. And again, one of many horses at the front of the market. There's 8-1, and you look at it and just think, all right, well, you could have a chance of him winning the race, but not at 8-1.
Yeah.
You let them go for it. There's at least 8 horses that are priced at 8-1, and then you've got another 20+ runners that potentially be in the race. It's madness at this stage, but the bookies have got to do it, haven't they? They gave us generous prices a couple of months ago when we had to get on, and if you haven't got on by then now you can sit and wait, can't you? Right, we'll move on to the Temps, Will, which, I mean, it should be fairly straightforward, shouldn't it? Now they've changed the criteria of it. The winning you're in, top 4 to qualify. In theory, they're trying to make it so you can't hide as much during the season. But I feel like I've watched so many of these replays back. I do quite like to do it for all the different types of races, just to see if I can see a similar type of horse or the obvious types of ones that go and do it. So many horses win this race that you could look at and just think, I think on the day they didn't even think they had a chance of winning it, and then they've just gone and won the race. It's madness. But Jericho de Repene has been very confident and supported at the front of the market. He's another one a bit, not like Firefox, but to a similar extent of the fact that I can understand why he's the price that he is to some degree, but in no way, shape, or form would I want to be back in Jericho de Repene, who was favourite for a Supreme, who was going chasing this season, who's now just qualified for attempts for the sake of it at 5-1 to win this, potentially in a race where there are some plotty ones. There are some that are a bit further down, depending whether they get in or not, that I could be interested in. I half hope that Ollie Murphy runs long draw, especially now the ground's come good, but I haven't heard him mentioned when Ollie Murphy has been asked, so I wonder if he's a 3-mile handicap horse for Aintree instead. I do quite like Doddy the Great at the prices, just because I think last year we all saw that the horse has got some ability. I don't think it was the bad ground in that Betfair hurdle that brought the best out of him. I think he'll be fine on this, and his Haydock run was quite good. But it's one of these. I think I'm trying to find the pieces to the puzzle, and I don't really know what the puzzle looks like, so I don't really know how to find the winner. Will, can you help me and the viewers out?
Yeah, the nature of the race has changed, hasn't it? Definitely with that winning you're in, which I think is less relevant, but it's more the first 4 to qualify now, and the fact that some of the qualifiers have been really uncompetitive events. Really small fields. I think there was one at Newbury where there was only 4 runners in it, so all 4 qualified instantly. So it's I must admit, looking through the race, the horses that are on the short list all tend to be those right down towards the bottom of the weights for me for some reason. I don't know why that is. I'm not going to second guess it. Perhaps that's because of the nature of those uncompetitive qualifiers with some of them, in that they've got in being rated low, and as a result, they're potentially going to get into the race rated lower than what has got horses in previously. Doddy the Great is one. He, caught the eye massively in cheap pieces at Haydock, didn't he, last time out? Thought that was a cracking run. He's got Cheltenham form on his day. He's a very classy type, but he's been in the doldrums for a while. But, Nicky Henson is so good at in races like this, getting a horse back to form, having a good prep run, and then going to the race itself. Zane Knights, I thought, was interesting for Lucy Wadham, another horse who qualified like long draw earlier on before Christmas. Comes out of that qualifier won by the Wool Park, which was well run. Gal rode in second, and Zane Knights was third on that day. He's run around in soft ground since then. It's not really suited. I think better ground will help him potentially. Long draw, I agree. I think he's very, very interesting. Sean Bowen is dropped up on the BHA site, so it might be that he does potentially go here. He does need, I think, 3 to come out to get in the race. And Lucinda Russell's again. I seem to be mentioning a few of Lucinda's horses in handicaps on day 2, but Idem I thought was interesting as well. Again, comes out of that Wool Park race, and then he ran an eye-catching race for me in the Musselburgh qualifier back on their trials day. And they're all grouped kind of in that high 120s range in terms of handicap rating, which, like I said, I don't know why that is. Maybe have 1 or 2 theories, but I'm not going to second guess it. I'd, potentially pick through those and find some at bigger prices with extra places on the day.
Oh, I like it. And I think Peter Scudamore did talk about Idem the other day. I saw him in an interview when he was pressed by an interviewer at can't remember what track it was up, somewhere on Racing TV, and he did give a good positive mention about Idem as well. So that's two people I need to take notice of. So I might have to get him on the team sheet now. I think he was 40s when they talked about that. So I don't know if he's about that same price now, but he's a big old price, I think, still.
Yeah, you can get 50s. Yeah.
Ooh, we'll have to get stuck in there then. Right. Ryanair Chase, Will. I don't want to say it is. It's a very different race than when we previewed it before because we weren't 100% sure where everyone was going. Now we know that the only option that Factor File has is this race. Now we know that Ile Francais is coming for this race. They've confirmed that already, the connections. They just said if something was to happen to any of the main protagonists in another race, they would go somewhere else. But obviously, they're not going to declare for the Champion Chase tomorrow unless something happens. So he'll be coming here. We've got Protectorat a little bit further down in the betting. Well, third favourite. Gaelic Warrior, if he comes to Cheltenham, looks like this would be the only place that he could go. Jungle Boogie's been supported at like double-figure prices. But I think the fact that we're going to get to see Factor File versus Ile Francais, Will, it whets the appetite for Cheltenham. But I think you have to take into consideration, well, I mean, you do anyway, but we have to think about the fact that, like horses that win at the Cheltenham Festival mostly have experience at Cheltenham. Most of them have experience at another festival. And I just think that I do like Ile Francais, but he's a horse that's bled in the past. He's bombed out on lots of occasions. And I do feel like him being here is going to be such a sight to behold. But I do think it's going to just be setting it up for Factor File. And I think that's why they're priced as they are. But that said, he's a 3-to-1 shot. And if he doesn't bleed and if he is fine round Cheltenham first time, then he probably is overpriced. It's just that the unknown, I guess, about probably both of them. Because even with Factor File, where they've tried to make him now settle to stay the trip, does that mean he's actually going to be as good as he was earlier in the season in Punchtime, that John Durkan? Because he was even outpaced in that race at certain points. And you'd imagine Galloping the Champ's obviously not slow, but you'd imagine Ile Francais, if he wants to, could go even quicker than that. So I'm fascinated to see how this all unfolds. I can run many sort of simulations in my head, but I basically just see Ile Francais winning and winning by miles. They never get close to him. I can see Factor File eating him up, travelling all over him, and then just winning by miles. Or I can see a third scenario, which isn't as often, and that is Ile Francais makes a couple of mistakes or doesn't manage to set the tempo for as longer time. And if the race does slow down in pace, then it's going to suit Protectorat, because I don't think he will be suited by a furious gallop set by Ile Francais to win the race. But if that gallop is sort of a slower one, a bit more sedate like it was in the race last year, then he probably is just the right type of horse to win this race. But I think he would need that to happen. I think he'd need the pace to not be as quick as it looks like it's going to be. So, I can't really work out where it is. And I think the bookies have probably priced this one up about right. So hats off to them for the time being. But I don't know where I'd sit at the minute. Where would you land in the race at the moment, Will, especially from those front two in the market?
Yeah, I think you're right in that it's priced up about right, in that Factor File is the right favourite. I think obviously previous Cheltenham Festival winning form, winning the Brown Advisory last year. I think you can pick holes in that form. If I'm completely honest, I think he won nicely, but I think that race fell apart both in terms of numbers declared and on the day. Stay Away Fay didn't run his race, and then you look at what some of those in behind have actually done since, and you think, well, it's not great form, really. He has obviously improved this year, as you'd expect him to do, Factor File. I mean, he won the John Durkan. That's always a good race, but it is also a race that is the starting point for many horses throughout their season. So the bare form of it, Galopin des Champs, Spillan's Tower, Fast or Slow, all back in second, third or fourth. I mean, can you take that really literally? And Factor File has been put in his place over 3 miles at Leopardstown, hasn't he, the last twice? And I think that watching him through those races, this trip suits him more at this stage of his career. So you can see, I'm completely with you in terms of the tempo of the race is going to be key. If Ile Francais, James Reevely can get it right, 2.5 miles or 2 mile 5 around the new course at Cheltenham can really suit that type of horse who dictates. But he'll have Harry Skelton on Protectorat wanting to dictate at certain points of the race as well. Whether he's quick enough to get to Ile Francais when he wants to is going to be interesting. That'll be very much dependent on the kind of form that Ile Francais is in. Yeah. But whatever way you cut it, I can certainly see an eventuality where something at bigger prices gets into it, because there's just one or two niggles for me about those at the top of the market. And Heartwood is the one that I've actually backed already. Backed him at the 5-day stage each way because he's 16-1. And I just think this race is ripe for something to improve from the younger horses, basically. And I don't think he's got a mountain to find by any stretch. I mean, he absolutely bolted up at the Dublin Racing Festival in the Handicap last year. If you watch the 3-mile Grade 1 Mildmay Novices Chase at Aintries Grand National Festival, he travelled better than anything in that race behind I Know the Way You're Thinking in Iroko, and he just didn't quite get home, beating Chianti Classico, Broadway Boy. He made all at Wexford on his seasonal debut, beating Corbett's Cross. He then didn't have the requisite strong pace he wanted in the Drinmore, but still finished, with a rattle to be a neck behind Croke Park. And then if you watch that Savills Chase back again at Christmas, he is pretty much the last horse off the bridle. And I include Galopin des Champs in that to some degree, in that Paul Townend kind of asked him to go. And it's still at that point, Rachel Blackmore and Hartwood was travelling. And that was at the third last. He jumped the third last upsides factor file, which is around about the range that you're going to be talking about for a 2.5 mile Ryanair, isn't it? So I think at this trip, with a guaranteed pace where he can settle and jump off it, I think Hartwood is a much bigger price than he should be. It might be, the value loser in the bet, in that he runs well at those prices and he just gets pipped for the places by the obvious horses. But I could see an eventuality where he really does mix it off the turn here, Hartwood. So I think he's a bet at a double figure price. I really do.
Yeah, I like that, because he was mentioned quite a bit earlier in the season, wasn't he? Of like, where do they go with him after this now? And then he's almost, I guess, been forgotten about more recently now, with the fact that the race has heated up with Factor File de France, with Gaelic Warrior coming in now, Protectorat looking the obvious one in there. So yeah, that's he definitely looks like an obvious shortener as well. So I quite like that one, Will. I'm hoping, I think everyone is, I'm hoping it all just pans out like we're expecting it to. In Le Francais, that's a lovely gallop, and then what happens after that is what happens after that, because it'll be the best horse wins if that does happen.
Yeah.
But it's potentially a lot's hinging on Le Francais if he does set his stall out early to take him on, actually doing that for the whole race. Because like I say, if for any reason he takes him on for the first half a mile or mile and then makes a massive mistake and they've all of a sudden got to slow back down, changes the whole complexion of the race in the middle of it. So it's going to be it's a tricky one, I think, for me to be confident about, like having to assume how the race is going to pan out. So yeah, I can't wait to see it though. Another race I can't wait to see, Will, is the Stayers Hurdle. This is as pretty much as we talked about last time. I think that Tippy's been where he is in the market, understandably so, reigning champion. He does set a bar that is probably beyond a lot of the horses that we run in this race. However, the dry and forecast coming up now, the fact that there are a few sort of challenges that conceivably could give him a bit something to think about. His price is starting to come out a little bit now. I still do think Lucky Place could be like a better horse over 3 miles, but he does. I've admitted the fact that he does need to be a much better horse now, stepping up in trip. So it could bring out the bit of improvement of him. I don't know where my head sits with this race at this point now, Will, in terms of if I was to see someone in the street and they said, "I'll give us a bet for the Stayers Hurdle," I don't know what I'd tell them, because Tiapu, I know he gets pigeonholed as a certain type of horse. The same thing happened last year before we actually won the Stayers. Well, horses that have run in the Stayers don't come back and win it, and everyone was poo-pooing that. If he was good enough to win it, he would have won it the year before. Lots of criticism in there. Then they say that he's a mudlark, all those types of things. But I thought his Punchestown run after Cheltenham was better than what he did at Cheltenham. Was off like a shorter break, but it was on quicker ground. Now, I know that there's a chance with the Thursday, because there's only so much water they can get in there, that it will be like lightning quick on the Thursday, but they'll make sure they do their best to say that doesn't happen. I think if he starts to push out, because on the exchanges he was 15-8 a couple of nights ago. If Tiapu gets out to like 2-1, 9-4, it's almost unthinkable when we were previewing this a couple of months ago. So I feel like that's where I'm going to start coming back round to it now, that if he ends up being just too big a price, he is just the best horse in the race. I might end up keeping it simple on that front. But in a world where he doesn't get bigger than 6-4, Will, is there a good bet, either just betting without him because you take him out of the race and it is competitive, or even with him in the race trying to take him on?
I think, this is definitely a race that is probably one to bide your time with, because I think if Gordon Elliott has, not that any horse's particular chance is reflected by how other horses from the stable have gone previously in the week, but what it will do is be reflected in the market, actually. Because if Gordon Elliott's had a good first couple of days, then, you know, Tehupu will be strong again in the market. If he hasn't, then, you know, he could continue to drift out. And I think you can make a case for his, you know, his one run this year, which is all that we've got to go on in the Hatton's Grace, was not as good as it was last year. You know, I know he's beaten, he's finished second to Lossiemouth, and everyone will say, well, Lossiemouth, that was good form. But again, we're a bit in the dark with Lossiemouth in terms of the form that she's in this year as well. And they only beat Beacon Edge and Beacon Edge by 5 lengths or so. And Beacon Edge has gone on to be beaten by lesser horses, a similar or even further margin since then. So for me, you could, if you wanted to grab Tehupu for one or two reasons, you can, I think, purely from a form perspective. So if you wanted an each way bet in this, I probably wouldn't put you off at this stage, but who it is the tricky thing, isn't it? I think the Wool Park is potentially the one. Obviously, the danger that lies within from the Gordon Elliott stable, really, because he was nothing but a massive improver before Christmas time. And then I think the run in the Long Walk Hurdle was very much a run to see if he belonged in that kind of company, and, you know, whether that was a bit of a culture shock to him initially, and then he got the hang of it late on and he ran on. You know, that was probably the case, and I think Connections will be hopeful that they've got a genuine Grade 1 stayer on their hands. And the market, of course, with regards to his chance, will tell you plenty, I would imagine. But I could see him on his, you know, if he continues to improve, he could be the improver.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the race last year, because I do know what you mean about like how horses have run in the week for the trainers. Depends on what happens with the price. But like Tehupu was weak last year, isn't he? But he got smashed on the day, didn't he? Like, yeah. I don't know how short. I think he went 5 to 4. He went off, but I think he went shorter at some points. But he was friendless pretty much throughout the season, like beforehand. So it is one of those that, in hindsight, you could bet into the race now, think, actually, you know, we'll take this one on, or we'll do X, Y, or Z. And then on the day, the money starts coming in, and you know your fate before they've even crossed the line. And if you've got in, especially for some of these sort of muggy each way bets in behind him, if you've bet some of these ones and they end up drifting wickedly, you can't really get back out of them. You have to just accept that you've thrown some money away trying to be a bit clever. But yeah, the Wool Park will be phenomenally interesting, given the fact that Gordon Elliott has both those horses. He knows where they stand in a pecking order, and there's no way that we've got to remember the Wool Park was picked up by JP McManus this season. There's no way he's going to intentionally run in behind a horse that he thinks he can't get close to. So I think that speaks volumes, and I can see his price going. That's where my worry comes with Tehupu, where I've said if we start getting 9 to 4, 5 to 2 about him, at what price does Tehupu come too big where you think, well, that's a bit dodgy now, isn't it? So we'll have to see how it all pans out. But that would be a nice problem to have, Will, if I could get 5 to 2 about Tehupu and then decide if it's too big or not. Never going to happen, but we can live and dream. I mean, it's not out of the realms of possibility, I don't think, especially if people get excited by like quick ground. If there's some quick times and stuff as well, everyone's going to take him on for it. And I don't think it will hinder as much as people say it will. Right. Got excited about the Stayers Hurdle there, but it is a championship race, so I'm allowed to, Will. The plate, though, we've touched on many horses that will be in this race when we talked about the Jack Richards Novices Chase. It's another one where I did think that Krabilli was being laid out for this. And, of course, they didn't confirm him for this, and then he's gone to the Ultima. So now I start to think to myself, oh, maybe they were plotting him for the Ultima, but I don't think that's the case. I just think he's just not having a very good season this year, and they just want to get another run to get his mark down, maybe. But I was probably blinkered in the way I was looking at this race, in the fact that I thought, well, stupidly, I'll just back Krabilli at prices, because if he comes in, then they must have intended to go for it. The fact that he's now come out of it, I'm sort of now thinking I'll just sit and wait, see what the confirmations are, see what the jockey bookings are. Because surely JP's got something that wins the plate if he's not running Krabilli. But did you have a strong view in it at the minute, or would it be another one like the Novices Handicap Chase, because they're doubly entered? We'll wait and see how the field pans out. Yeah,
I think you can rewind back to my previous comments for the Novices Handicap Chase. I mean, just looking at the market very, very quickly, the top 6 or 7 horses in the market are also entered in the Novices Handicap Chase. So it's going to have a massive effect which horse goes which way here. And there's not too many connections really showing their cards, are there, at this stage as well, because they don't want to break cover and let the other people make decisions on what they've done. So, look back to what I've said in terms of the horses from the previous race, the Novices Handicap Chase, and then we'll revisit it in the column closer to the day, I think.
Lovely. Well, as much as I threw some bad money at Krabilli, I've also thrown some worse money at Panic Attack, Will, because I know she doesn't do it out of mare's company, but since joining the Skeltons this year, she actually has looked quite good, and she's much better over fencing than she is over hurdles. When she ran last time and she got beat over hurdles, I still think it was quite a good effort. So I feel like she's just the type of horse where this race is now going to pan out. If she's on a real good going day, she could run all right, but she's only about 12-1, so she's not even anything juicy, to be fair. And she's another one of those that if she gets declared she's weak in the market, I'll just think to myself, why did I try and get one at this point? I could have just sat and waited. But she's on my mind, so we'll have to see how the field turns up. The Kim Muir Amateur Jockeys Handicap Chase. We haven't got, I know the way you're thinking, type horse running in this time round. I don't even know what price he would have been at this stage just before the week, but he got absolutely hammered, didn't he?
Did. I'm sure it was about 5-1, 9-2, something like that.
Yeah, I think it was a fair price. Now, Johnny Who has been confirmed that this is the place he's going at, so that's fine. People are thinking, well, he's the new, I know the way you're thinking type stuff. He's been terrible though, wouldn't he? Like there isn't, you'd have to go back to his Chase debut, then you'd have to go back to his first hurdle run at the beginning of last season to have any confidence in him as a horse. So I know people would have probably already got him in the book at prices, but another one of those when we're talking these 5-1 favourites and handicaps or shorter, he looked bad. Same Majest could still come here. Again, another little JP one. I feel like he's more the right type for this, as we talked about that before. But one came on my radar in between, Will, when we did the preview last time and now, and that's Walking on Air. And he has been significantly supported even in the last couple of weeks, and it continues to happen now. On good ground, this horse is, I don't think he's that ground dependent, but on good ground, he's going to have a significant advantage over a number of horses that might not handle it as well. And in his run where the Change Man finished second to Doc Pickme, he'd have won that day if he'd have stood up. And I know he didn't stand up, but he started this season, changed yards to Gary Hamer. But he started this season, he's got a significant drop in the weights off the back of it, but they've run him over inadequate trips earlier on in the season. And I feel like as much as they probably did want to win that Grimthorpe with him, they probably still thought we could win that and come to win this race. And I think now the money started to come from him. It looks significant. Whether it's just going to be a snowball effect now and everyone gets stuck in there, but he's actually got some decent back form for Nicky Henderson, including at the festival as well. So he's been another one of these horses. We've talked probably about plenty of them on the preview that they've failed to deliver in their career, but they've shown enough promise to suggest they could run well. The Kim Muir, as much as it's a lovely race to get stuck into, I wouldn't say it's the top of the tree for the best class horses necessarily winning this. I know that's bad to say when we've got, I know the way you're thinking that's favourite for a Grand National is going to be supplementing for a Gold Cup. We'd make a case for him in there. But I just mean you might get a horse that's just a very good horse that gets its day in this type of race. So yeah, Walking on Air's fully got on my radar for this one. I've got into him a little bit, and I don't think I'll deviate too much away from him or Same Majest I've mentioned before. So that's where I'm sitting on it. Kim Muir for you, Will, still the same thoughts as before, or have you managed to find a new one like I have?
There's a couple on the radar, definitely. And again, this jockey bookings is key in this particular race, given it's amateurs and the ground, I think, as well. But yeah, the couple that I was interested in, there might be a few more that get added to it over the course of the next few days with a bit more work. But yeah, man, for Gavin Cromwell, I thought was really interesting. Ran a really good race, I thought, in the Thyestes behind Nick Rocket. He was then travelling so well in the Grand National trial at Haydock. He's a horse who's got all of his form on soft or heavy ground, but you actually watch how he travelled in that race at Haydock on better ground. And I think it's something he's been crying out for a long time, actually. And you can really see Cheltenham drying ground and that type of track suiting him. So maybe, being unseated in that Grand National trial has done him a favour in some respects, in that he's going to come here and get into the race still because he's not rated beyond the 145 ceiling. So he's of definite interest. Yeah, man. Don't know who will ride him. That will be interesting to see if he does get declared. And Nine Graces is the other one for Barry Connell, because I think she's crying out for this step up in trip as well. Her form, is probably not really there over fences in terms of the horses she's been competitive with and who she's been beating. But she's been doing that over shorter trips, and everything she's done has suggested she's going to fly now that she gets a real proper staying trip. Finney Maguire obviously has rode her the last twice, given that he works for Barry Connell. So, real association there. And if you look at some of her form over hurdles, it's very good handicap form in some of those Potence qualifiers and 3 mile races around Leopardstown with the likes of Feet of a Dancer and Gay Cool and Maxim and one or two others. So I think she's been a horse that's flown under the radar a little bit, and she's going to really improve for the step up in trip.
Love it. Right, let's wrap up Thursday. We'll do the same again. We'll go for a best bet and then one at a price if we've got it. I'll let you go first this time so you can give me a second to think.
Best bet. Yeah, I don't have too many short price fancies on day 3, I must admit. Probably go...
Put you right.
Let's go Wall Park each way. I know he's not a short price, but I think he's a really good bet in the Stayers Hurdle. And big price each way, Hartwood in the Ryanair.
Nice, I like it. I mean, this is for the purpose of the show more than anything else. I know I'm the one that's come up with the idea of us doing this, but I'm being the least committal. I'd definitely say I'm siding fairly strongly now with 6.5 in that Mare's Novice Hurdle. I just believe that she's an obvious winner of the race. So I think she would look like a strong one of the shorties. And I would give Doddy the Great probably in the Potemps would be one I'd like. I did mention Bugay Sigao, I think, last time we did this. He ticks all the boxes for the Potemps. He's one that's interesting if he gets in there. So I'll throw both of them up. You can bet both of them. But of course, check the columns when we get to the week of the festival to find out what the, I don't want to say actual bets are, but obviously things change, don't they? We'll have a couple of races under our belt by the time we get through to Thursday. And it's easy as well with it. We can look at stuff so far in advance that you don't shift, do you, Will? But then once we've got the first couple of days worth of information, by the time it comes to Thursday, Friday, you are a bit foolish if you're not sort of readjusting things, aren't you?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt. Like trainer form, ground, run style. There's so much more information to be gleaned from the first couple of days with regards to picking bets for the end of the meeting, definitely.
Right. Well, with that said, let's try and find all the winners on Friday, Will. The Triumph Hurdle, I feel like this could be one of our quicker ones because I was Team Lilamba. I think you were Team East India Dock. But basically, I forced you to have that decision because you were saying that if you had the choice to have a bet, you'd put it on him because he's got it on the table. But you understand that horses can surpass those types of things. Talking about this race now, Will, he's 13-8 for East India Dock, but I'm quoting like a low price there. He's 2-1 in most places, and Lulamba's 9-4, top price 2-1 everywhere. So they have both tightened up a little bit. There's no way you'd have changed your opinion on this one. That he sets a good enough bar that you think could be enough to win this race, especially given on what we've seen this season, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way of putting it is if East India Dock runs his race, then I think Lilamba will have to put up the best Triumph Hurdle performance we've seen for many a year to beat him. That's probably the best way of putting it, which could happen. I'm not saying that's not going to happen because the way that one or two of the vibes with regards to Lilamba before he made his hurdle debut. I mean, I don't know if you remember back, he was a real springer in the Triumph Hurdle market before he ran. He was due to run at Kempton, I think, wasn't he? And that got abandoned. Yep. So suddenly the cat was out of the bag in terms of the price, and then he turned up at Ascot and won. But he was impressive. Don't get me wrong, he was impressive. He beat the horses he had to beat that day. He wasn't asked too many questions, but when he was asked a question, he went and answered it quite nicely. So, you've got to be of the mind or an open mind in that he could be something really special, without a shadow of a doubt. But East India Dock is something pretty special, and we know that for a fact on what he's done the last twice, both visually and on the clock. So just for me, I'll keep an open mind on it. But if you've got them 2-1 the pair, I'd always be of the ilk that, go with the absolute tried and tested. And it's not tried and tested in a 0 to 110 handicap. It's, he has put in, I can't emphasize this enough, really top-notch performances. So that would be the way I sway. But, got to be open-minded about it. Lilamba could be a superstar too. Yeah,
I hear you. I mean, I think the winner does come between those two, but when they're twos on each, we're getting sort of twos on. But we're right about that. I think as well with the East India Dock thing, we say this with loads of different types of races through the season. But like if they were trained by Willie Mullins or Nicky Henderson, they would be like an even money pipe for the race because we'd say, well, they're the best in the yard, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. So you could see his price going one way, but it will just be fascinating to see on that Friday how much money comes for Lilamba because they knew beforehand. And if Lilamba's strong in the market, that would speak volumes obviously in favour. And if for any reason he's weak in the market, the same people that backed him before he had made his debut, they'll know if he's up to scratch to beat East India Dock on the day. And if he's not, then East India Dock will get steamed into. So So definite sit and wait one at the moment. Although I've been drawn in a little bit with Ilamba because he went out to 5-2 at a couple of points. So I have topped up a tiny bit on there, but yeah, can't wait to see that race. Another one of the good things of Cheltenham Festival Week, you've got these nice clashes that are set up, and obviously not everything else is a no hope in the race. We could get a Springer in there, but we know that it's going to be a good winner of the race regardless of who actually wins it. Right,
yeah,
Will?
I mean, having said that, Dave, with the Mayor's Novice Hurdle, sorry, Willie Mullins had 2 horses going to make their debut for the yard in that particular race if they ran. Just looking down, he's got 5 horses still entered in this who haven't run for the yard. So, there could be a flying machine in there. We don't know.
Yeah, and it is just that. Like, there's lots of horses, especially for the juveniles. I think their rate of progression is just the steepest of any race at the Cheltenham Festival. Less so with the Boodles because they've been ridden to be hidden, I guess. These juveniles in here, you could just find a very phenomenal horse that they don't even realise it's that good yet. Like, nobody knows until they go and do it. And then the conditions of Cheltenham just, sometimes it's what some horses have been crying out for, isn't it? Like a proper championship pace to go and aim at. Good looking race. Right, County Hurdle, Will. When we talked about the preview last time, I think you were pretty sweet on Cargase for this race. Yeah. That rhymes. I'm guessing you're still just as sweet, given the fact that she's not been declared for the mares. It's where she'll be coming. She's starting to shorten up now. And, of course, there are multiple Willie Mullins horses who could come in here.
Yeah,
I would be staggered if this is the race that she runs in, which it looks like it is, if Paul Townend wasn't riding her, because she's that graded horse in a handicap. So obviously if he does ride her, she's going to be short. Would you be put off if Paul rode something else?
No, I wouldn't, because there's Ethical Diamond and Absurd still in there as well. And Absurd obviously won the race last year on ground that went against him. Ethical Diamond is a very classy ex-flat horse who's not been gifted a mark by the handicapper, it must be said. So I wouldn't be put off. I'd be thinking, well, okay, that's not ideal, but so much can happen in a county hurdle. I mean, but Cargase to me just looks. She looks absolutely tailor-made for the race because the juvenile form last year from the hurdlers has worked out really well. I mean, Sergino, Majbra, and then a whole host of other horses that were beaten in Grade 1 events last year have come out and proved themselves to be either graded performers this year or ahead of their handicap marks that they've got. So Cargase instantly is on the radar. I mean, she was a couple of lengths behind Sergino and Majbra, and she's got a mark of 141 somehow on the back of that, which I understand because the juvenile hurdle form at that stage was rated where it was rated then. She's only had one run this year where she ran at Ascot in the mares hurdle there, the Grade 2. And it was very much a pipe opener for her, wasn't it? On ground that was maybe lively enough for her. Off a slow tempo, she was held up a little bit keen. And she actually came through and ran a really nice race, I thought, with the likes of Vu Betty and behind Take No Chances. So I think that was a lovely prep run. It meant that her mark wasn't scuppered. If she's in the same form that she was in last year when she was close up in the Triumph Hurdle, as long as she gets a clean run, county hurdle, etc., she has to take a huge amount of beating, on the ability she's got. I think she's got a massive chance. I really do.
I like
just
it.
Need the luck now, county hurdle. I mean, it can be a real bun fight, but just need the luck.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And when we talked about Kopek to me on the preview, this is the first time I mentioned him tonight, there was vibes, especially in the last few days, that maybe he was going to go to the county, and he started to tighten up on the exchange for that, and now he's gone favourite back again in the Martin Pike where he's tightened up in there. But we know with Willie Mullins targeting horses for this race, there are all different types that can go and do it. Arctic Fire won the county for him, didn't it, after being like a champion hurdle horse off the track for ages. And as much as we all like to think that they're these unexposed novices that come in there, if he's got a horse that he knows is better than its current mark, and it's like those types of distancey horses, he doesn't try and hide them. But if for some reason, like your State Mans when they fall and San Juans and stuff, like if things just don't go to plan, then this can be a beautiful plan B because it's Cheltenham Festival success, isn't it? And I think that's it. With her Take No Chances run, if she'd have settled and she'd have slammed her, she'd be going in the mares, and then maybe Lossy Mouth will be going for the champion hurdle if things would have all been fine with her. But it may just be now that it's just been a benefit of that last run, and she does look lightly handicapped. So yeah, I'm semi-annoyed. Not that, well, I mean, it's the only way that it could happen, isn't it? She can't be declared for the mares and then come in here. But I'm semi-annoyed now that she's just shortening because I feel like she's going to be incredibly short come Friday now. She's 7-1 top price at the moment, but I'd imagine by the time Tuesday kicks off, she'd already have been backed into sort of 5 to 1, 4 to 1, maybe even 7 to 2. Did you put her up on the website? Didn't you?
I have done. Yeah.
What price did you put her up at?
I think it was 10s. I think off the top of my head. Yeah.
Team Will Smith, well done, mate. Right. Let's move on to another race which has changed complexion in what it could have been multiple times through the season, but again, more recently as well, because Only by Night was well supported for this race. Maybe for the, I don't know, it's like a nice little each way bet that's going in there. But Dino Blue still heading the market. Bioluminescence was taken out of the race. Panic Attack was in it, but she's been taken out of the race. I still really do just think that Dino Blue, this is her year to get the win. And I think there's a running style this season, those couple of runs where they've kept her on the inside of the track as well. Like I think Mark Walsh has just watched last year's race back and just thought, if I got first run, if I had that rail, all these things. And I think they're going to try and get redemption this year. I think she does win the race. The only thing that's stopping me wanting to really fully put the hammer down is the tongue tie and the fact that she didn't see out the race at Christmas possibly. And even the run behind Energumene in that hilly way, as much as it's a good bit of form when she was 10 pounds wrong, she maybe didn't see out the race as strongly as she could have done. But maybe I'm just being nitpicky with her. But I think that's well covered in her price. She's sort of 6 to 4, 7 to 4 in places, I think. And I think that's fine for a horse that I actually expect to dot up in this. I'm terrified of Allegory Devassi just because I keep getting her wrong the whole time. And I know that she's got some ability in her, but she spent too many times now like failing to deliver that I can't have her anymore. But Willie Mullins is now saying the nicer ground's going to see her run better and all this sort of stuff. It's frying my head because she had that race at the start of the season where I put her up when she was going against the Gordon Elliott horse. Can't remember the name of her, but the one that was the eye-catching ride on these shores before it went up against her. But she was like a 6 to 4 poke against that. That horse came out, so she ended up being like a 4s on poke in a really Mickey Mouse Mares Chase at the start of the season on good ground. Gets beat, doesn't like good ground, and then it comes to the festival. She loves good ground. She'd be better for it. But they did say before that race, which is why I bet her for it. They said she would be better on the good ground, and then she gets turned over in basically a walkover that she's got, for me, no reason to get beat. So I just think they can say what they want about this race. I really do think Dino Blue's going to hack up in this. I'm worried about her breathing. That'll be my own excuse for her getting beat. And I know she's jumped bad in the past before, but she's much better now. I think the conditions have come perfect for her. I think she's going to be very hard to beat in it. Do you think now, I mean, the field has cut up, do you think there is anyone that could beat her, Will? Or do you think she's as bomb-proof as me?
I think she's the quickest horse in the race. Whether that... I think last year things didn't quite set up for her in terms of it was pretty soft ground, and Limerick Laced Keith Donoghue gave that one an absolute peach and turned it into just enough of a stamina test to mean that she just couldn't quite reel her in the closing stages. I thought it was a brilliant ride from Keith Donoghue on that occasion. And I think if the ground is livelier and Limerick Lace doesn't seem to be in the same kind of form, Allegory Devassi, I'm never that keen on left-handed, I must admit. I think she's better right-handed. And then quickly, the race, there's not much depth to it, is there really? So I could see Dino Blue winning, without a doubt. Telepathique has been quite a shortener in the market. She's that kind of run style, isn't she? From the front, you can see her going well. And the horse that I was half hoping to back sneakily each way at a double-figure price is now single figures as well. And because of Only by Night coming out, and that was Bride's Hill. Because if it was genuine good ground and a good pace on, I think we'll see a really good performance from Bride's Hill. But will we get that kind of setup? And is she a backable price right now? Not sure on the first and no on the second. So we'll just have to wait till nearer the time. But Dino Blue's probably the quickest and best horse in the race. So hopefully for you, that means she goes and wins.
Fingers crossed. And as I say, it's the breathing, the I guess maybe potential red herring in there, and the fact that she has been gone to Cheltenham and got beat multiple times. But that's what's helping us get the price. I think on what she's done this season and figures and all that sort of stuff, she probably should be an odds-on poke. But there's always obviously no smoke without fire type stuff. Right. Conscious that I've waffled plenty and we've got a few more races to go through. The Albert Bartlett now, Will. You made a good case for Jasmine DeVoe last time in the fact that there's just the one hurdle in the last half mile. So if Gordon defects the yellow clay, I will be running along like a little lemming and still believing that he's a very good horse, trusting Gordon, and I will be having a bet on the yellow clay. But in the world that he doesn't come here, I think Jasmine DeVoe does feel like a good solid bet in the fact that the jumping's his problem, but he hasn't got to worry about the jumping too much in here. And like you said, if he could just stay in the race, I think he looks a fair bet. He's still 10-1 at the time we're recording this one. Obviously, there's only 3 places up for grabs at the moment, but I think he looks a fairly safe bet in there. But it would be one I'd want to do a bit more work on nearer the time. We've seen some big price winners of this one. Are you still have a similar thought process as when we talked about this last time, in the fact that we don't know definitely that Final Demand and Yellow Clay don't come in, but we don't think they do?
Well, I backed Wendigo a couple of weeks ago for this, because he just looked overpriced at that stage. I think the Challow Hurdle Run, for all that seems to be a race that is continually crabbed for one reason or another. Still think what Wendigo did there was impressive, because they'd gone a good solid tempo, and he was off the bridle earlier than most. Not badly, but just he had to be kept pushing forward into the bridle by Gavin Sheehan. And often when you find horses that are that way, you then get to the proper stages of the race where it gets interesting and they have to go again. He did, he really hit the line strong. So I think a well-run race over 3 miles is going to absolutely see Wendigo in an even more improving light. Might be that the new line goes and boosts that form quite nicely, and Wendigo continues to be supported. But I think of those in here, particularly if Final Demand and the Yellow Clay go to the 2.5 mile race, then I'd have Wendigo a single figure price. I really do think he'll improve massively for it. And Jamie Snowden, with a small bunch of horses that go to the festival year in, year out, he continually pops one up every now and again, doesn't he? And the bigger meetings, he's very good at getting them right on the day. So Wendigo it would be each way for me, I think.
Happy days. It'd be a good little story for the racing club as well, wouldn't it? For all the many owners and stuff to even have a horse that's contesting a race like that, but to have the confidence that if the new line did run well in that Turners, that will really frank it. And then obviously if he doesn't, you could say, well, our lad's going over a further trip. His answers questions still to be answered. It's a good position to be in for people like that, because he has got a bit of a squeak, and Albert Bartlett, they've all got a squeak, haven't they?
They do, yeah. I mean, there'll be some big prices that run really well, so delve into the race further down the line.
Absolutely. Right, Will. Gold Cup. I know the way you're thinking is being supplemented for this. It hasn't happened as we're recording this, but it's going to happen. We talked about the fact that, I can't even remember so much of it, because the Gold Cup just blurs into the fact that Galopin Des Champs obviously just wins. The only way he doesn't is something bad happens and no one wants to think about that scenario. So he does win. I'm sure when we talked about it before and we were trying to make a case for like a betting without or something to come second, it was much of a muchness sort of in behind. Whereas I know the way you're thinking coming in now would look the standout obvious one to be sort of, I guess, the horse to follow him home. But then he wasn't in the Gold Cup, was he? And he is being supplemented, and the Grand National is his target. So I'm worried that, I don't know, if I do go down that train and he's going to be a short enough price, I'd imagine, in the without market, I'm just finding a bet that I didn't need to find and just enjoy Galopin Des Champs winning it. So I'm sat with a few multiples with Galopin Des Champs going in. I'd backed Jerry Clom at the start of the season. That's obviously not ended well, but I won't be looking to do anything else in this race now other than cheer home Galopin Des Champs with his third Gold Cup. Have you got anything from a betting angle within here, do you think, Will?
There's possibilities. I think we'll have to see how things play out in terms of stable form and the weather, etc. But I could see an eventuality where I wouldn't be keen on, I know the way you're thinking, or Banbridge, I must admit, up against Galopin Des Champs, because I think he'll just take them into places that they've never been before, particularly Banbridge, who Banbridge won the King George, I think, by outstaying and claiming a horse that was weakening. I think if he tries to do that to Galopin Des Champs, Galopin will just be off again, won't he? I don't think he'll be able to get past him. I can see Ahoy Senor and the Real Whacker running very, very well, because they'll be prominently ridden. If it is drying ground, they'll both love that. They're not bets at this stage by any stretch, and I wouldn't be backing them against Galopin Des Champs. But if you did have a 9-runner race and you could get 3 places in a market without Galopin, then you're probably going to get double figures about those two each way. And because of their run style, because they like good ground, if it continues to dry out, you could see them running a lot better and perhaps fending off 1 or 2 of those that are travelling in behind when it comes to the run to the line. But I think they'll all be seeing a clean pair of hooves up that hill from Galopin Des Champs.
Fingers crossed anyway, Will. And it'll be another one of those for like the place pot type legs. You almost feel like the competitive nature of some of the other races, you'd bank on Galopin Des Champs, but also at the same time, you're thinking, if you want it to pay anything, you almost need him out of the frame, didn't you? But just can't see it happening. Right.
No, I can't.
Hunter's Chase, Will. Was it Angel's Dawn you were quite sweet on when we talked about last time?
Yeah, although the ground, I'm very worried about the ground. So I haven't backed her, and I won't back her at the price that she is if it is, decent ground, because I think she's much better on a lot softer.
That's fair.
But she's the best horse in the race. I'll put it that way, but she needs soft ground.
Yeah, and this is one of these fiddly types of contests where they've lots of the horses have got lots of ability, haven't they? But they might need the perfect conditions on the day or at the time for it to come into it. So we won't spend too much time on the Hunter Chase. I do think the Shearer thing will be interesting, because even Paul Nicholls, when he talks about the fact that he likens the horse to Pasha de Polder, and he said that this has been a plan for a while to get the ride for Olive Nichols. Like when Pasha de Polder won it for Victoria Pendant, and I was like, this is ridiculous, because it's like a TV story. Didn't bet the horse, and I'm thinking I should have had a tenner on it type stuff. But that's what I feel a bit like with the Hunter Chase races. I feel like it's a quick way to the poorhouse if you try and find the good horse in the race and start to follow him, like I've done with It's On the Line. So I still think I'll have a bit on It's On the Line each way, because he's that type of horse that I'll do it. But I've had that token tenner on Shearer this year, so that I don't have to throw an empty plastic glass at a TV screen when Pasha de Polder goes in. Right. Martin Pipe, Will, the conditional jockey's handicap hurdle to see things out. Kopek to me, I feel like when we spoke last time, I feel like you were quite dismissive in the fact that it's hard to know with his French type stuff, and obviously he's rated what he's rated, but because of the fact that he is so short and all those types of things, you were just like, if he wins, he wins. You're almost looking at the races without him in there, aren't you?
I think so. I mean, it's just one of those where we see it year in, year out. Horses, come over, they're sort of well touted on their first start. The likes of Gallic Warrior, Gentleman de Me did it off the back of just one start, I think, for Willie Mullins. There was a horse that ran in what is now the William Hill Handicap Hurdle at Newbury last year for the Munir and Suede combination. Who was supposed to be the next best hurdler since Isterbrak, but got beaten. So it happens, doesn't it? And to come and make your debut in the white hot heat of the Cheltenham Festival, the Martin Pipe Conditional Jockeys race, where it's a real bun fight. It could happily go and win. I think in terms of his handicap, Mark, he's handicapped on the form that was there at that stage in France. There are people making a case for him being really well handicapped, but that's on collateral form of what horses have done since.
Correct.
Because they've improved. Kopek to me will have improved for joining Willie Mullins. It's probably a given. But that's why he's been given that mark. That's what he is at that stage. So, just unknown for me. And to back a horse like that at sort of 11-4, 5-2, like he is now, it's just not my style. It just isn't something that I would do. So Parker King's on the radar again.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Will, I'm sorry, I don't cut you off there, but just like I know the way you're thinking last year that just got absolutely smashed up, and then wins like a good thing, doesn't it? Yeah. Is there any time where, say, like a Kopek to me, if he ended up being like so short a price where you'd almost have to almost admit defeat and just be like, actually, there's no point taking this one on anymore? Or would it always just be the case that I'm going to oppose him, so I will oppose him all the way through? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting to see which way he does go. I mean, if he got backed into 6-4, 13-8, then you're thinking before the race, something. He clearly is absolutely flying. He's working with Galopin des Champs, Lossiemouth, all of those horses and cantering over them, Kopek de Mord. Then that's probably what's happening. But is that going to translate onto the racetrack? I think with I Know the Way You're Thinking, he had showed that he was capable of doing something like that on the racetrack on a number of occasions on these 100%. Shorts. So look, it really isn't for me.
The only reason why I would thought it was worth mentioning, because we obviously have got a few people that are watching this as well, but there comes a point where the FOMO starts to drop in, where people haven't backed this horse at say even 10-1. They see 3-1 top price now, bottom price 2-1, and think, well, I might as well back him now because he's going to go off short. Whereas the case is you almost just leave it alone, don't you? And if it gets to the race and you want to get stuck in or something, but there's everything.
Look, I think if you backed it, for me, it would only be having a saver to get your stake back on something else. That would be the only way I'd consider backing it, just as a small safety net. That would be the only thing I would do. I wouldn't be backing it to try and make a profit.
Well, that's fair, right? So, who does beat him if the bubbles burst and he's a nothingness? Because we see it year after year, especially in the Martin Pipe. There's a number of fancied horses, and they can't all win. Even last year, Better Days Ahead, Key to Bourbon, Waterford Whispers, all three of them were highly touted. One of them did win the race, but who's the other one in there? Because Wood, who's been highly touted by Gordon Elliott, he won't have her beat in all the previews he's talking about her. But I wasn't so keen on her. We both said that last time. Is there one that you'd like at a price?
Well, Parker Kings, who I mentioned with the Coral Cup, if he does come here, then he's a definite bet for me. JP McManus owned, of course, as well. Interestingly, he has been ridden by conditional jockeys the last twice, Peter Smithers and Connor Stone Walsh. So one of those two would come into the reckoning, you'd imagine. If it's Connor Stone Walsh, I mean, he's been riding big race winners all season long over in Ireland for Gavin Cromwell and one or two other trainers. So, he would be a real positive if he rode Parker Kings in this race if he came here. And the other one would be Beat the Bat for Harry Fry, who's had he's had a tricky season, hasn't he, Harry Fry? And they're just every now and again there's a glimmer that they're turning, and then it just kind of slides back a little bit. So I don't know if he's got too many runners beforehand in the week, but you'd like to see a little bit of stable warmth. But he's a horse who's crying out for a step up to 2.5 miles. He's running all the big 2-mile handicap hurdles this year, pretty much. And every time he's run well, he's travelled fine, and then he's just got outpaced by speedier sorts. But he's not faded. He's always hit the line. So I think he's crying out for 2.5. Beat the Bat. He's also in the Coral Cup as well. So, but he'd need less to come out to get into this race compared to the Coral Cup. So he's on the radar.
Beautiful. Right, that does wrap up all 4 days. Well, we've almost kept it to 7 o'clock. I think we've done well. Pat on the back. We do need to give best bet for Friday and then an outsidery one. So I'm happy to go first. Dino Blue, especially 6-4, 7-4. I appreciate the windy bit, so it would always be a limit to how excited I'd get about this one. But I think she's the biggest value bet as well, especially for the shorties. And then for one at a bit of a price, I'm trying to think if I've even said anything at a price. Don't know that I have. So I'll just say that. Yeah, just say Dino Blue on the Friday. That will do. Will, your shorty, bestie bet and then a big price one? Because you've given us plenty for Friday.
Yeah, well, two that are probably best bets. East India Dock and Cargese, or Cargese, however you pronounce her name. And outsider each way bet Wendigo in the Albert Bartlett.
Beautiful. Right. Thank you so much for your time. Well, it's been awesome to do some work with you this season. Talk about this stuff. And it's nice as well, like here, we timestamp things by previewing as we did back then, checking things out now, and then no doubt during the week as well, our views might change on a few things. So make sure you are checking out the Which Bookie website for tips as they're updated and uploaded onto those. Hopefully all of you have enjoyed the content that we put out this season. There'll be a bit more hopefully coming up for Aintree after Cheltenham. But all it is for us to say now, Will, is have a very good and profitable Cheltenham Festival, everybody. Fingers crossed it's possible. Hopefully we all make money at the festival this year.
Let's hope so, Dave. Yeah. Thanks for your help with all of these. It's been really enjoyable. And thanks to everyone that's tuned in and listened. Hopefully we've given you some kind of entertainment, one or two snippets of information. And have a great week next week. Set to be a cracker.
Awesome. Thanks again, Will, and thank you guys at home for joining us.